What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto woke up surrounded by all his shadow clans and they were with different women? If you enjoy this video then please like, share and do comment. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. So let us start the story.
Yuki took a breath and read the title, Uzumaki Naruto. To the victor, the spoils. Naruto spoke up in confusion, wait. Naruto? Yuki gave a nod, yup, in this world Naruto, you are a girl. It often happens, just like it's often that Kiba, Shikamaru, and Sasuke are girls. Or the occasional one where Hinata's a boy. Those ones are always interesting, watching a male Hinata hook up eventually with a female Naruto. Heck, there's one where Hinata's sister Hanabi is a boy. Naruto was surprised, and comments of gender-swapping characters kept the usual rabble from commenting on it happening to Naruto, while Naruto stole glances at Hinata at the repeated mentions of him hooking up with the girl he had originally thought of as weird, but maybe she wasn't. Maybe she would be worth going after instead. He'd have to see how a relationship turns out before he does anything about it though. Chapter 1. The day after. Konohagakure no Sato, 12 years after the Kyuubi attack. Uzumaki Naruto walked down the road to the Hokage Tower humming slightly. She felt like she was walking on air. Finally, after 3 years of consecutive failures, she had graduated from the Konoha Ninja Academy and was a kunoichi. A slight frown crossed her face. Just yesterday she had failed the graduation exam again. An exam she now knew had been rigged by the traitor Mizuki, so there was no way she could pass. This brought shocked looks of various levels from everyone as they looked at Naruto. He failed because he was sabotaged by one of the teachers? Yuki then spoke up, your sensei Iruka was the only teacher that didn't flat out ignore Naruto. While Mizuki went out of his way to mess up Naruto's education and keep him from graduating. His inability to use the clone jutsu isn't his fault, as about 60% of all Uzumaki are medically incapable of using so little chakra to actually use the clone technique. In fact, it was this problem that originally led the Nidaime Hokage Tobirama Senju to create the shadow clone technique in the first place. Letting this sink in, Yuki continued reading. Afterwards, Mizuki had come up and told her about a special makeup exam she could take. All she had to do was infiltrate the Hokage Tower, steal a specific scroll, learn a jutsu from it and presto, she could graduate. Now half of them just stared at Naruto with a deadpan expression while Hinata seemed to forget about her fainting problem as she shyly clung to Naruto's arm in an attempt to comfort him as Naruto began to panic. I was desperate, okay. The infiltration had been easy. Wait, sneaking past Junin and Anbu was easy? Ino looked both shocked and incredulous. Naruto nodded and blushed while Yuki spoke up. Naruto, believe it or not, has Anbu recruit level stealth in his usual outfit when he was 7 to 9 years old. If he focused more on that than being the heavy hitter he turns out to be normally, he'd be the greatest infiltration specialist in history. Think about that for a moment. As the Anbu patrols were far too set in their patrol patterns and she had slipped though during a small gap when none of the Anbu could see her. She giggled when she remembered what happened next. Her Ji-chan had caught her as she was about to take the scroll, so she hit him with her original ninjutsu, the anti-pervert Oiroke no jutsu. Sakura scoffed, as if Hokage-sama would fall for such a perverted technique. And knocked him out, blood gushing from his nostrils as he left consciousness behind. Sakura was gaping at being proven wrong like that, before she began to blush. Whether that blush was out of embarrassment or mortification or even feminine rage was hard to tell. The others were chuckling at her expression though. When she had reached the clearing, she had unrolled the scroll, only to discover that the first jutsu in it was a clone jutsu, her very worst ninjutsu. It had taken her 2 hours to learn the damn jutsu and she had been very tired afterwards. Yuki looked at them with a smug look on his face. You call Naruto a dead last, and yet it took him only 2 hours to learn a B-rank jutsu. Something that would take others months to learn and use to the level he got in that short amount of time. Does that sound like a dead last to you? Naruto blushed and smiled in pride as most of the others looked at Naruto in shock and a little bit of awe. Hinata just looked proud at Naruto as she sat next to him while Sasuke looked rather jealous. Besides, Naruto is a genius at kinesthetic learning, so the boring lectures and paperwork of the classroom wouldn't be able to showcase his talents correctly. Not long after she had mastered the jutsu, she had been discovered by Iruka-sensei, her other class teacher. He had just figured out Mizuki's plan when he pushed Naruto out of the way of a barrage of kunai and shuriken. He even took an Fuma shuriken to the back in order to protect her. Hinata was clinging tightly to Naruto in fear for Naruto as well as the Naruto they were reading about, while the looks of horror spread among the faces of the Oths as they realized just what was happening and how much of it actually happened. Mizuki had then told her why she was hated by the villagers. She was the container of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the nine-tailed demon fox that the fourth Hokage had sacrificed his life to defeat when it attacked the village 12 years ago. Those looks of horror grew as their skin paled at the thought. He had a demon sealed in him? And the villagers hated him for it? Those in his class began regretting their treatment of the blonde. Naruto was looking around in fear of how the others would react to him and was shrinking into his clothes as if trying to make himself smaller and not knowing how to react at seeing the regret on the others' faces. Hinata cursed her shyness and was thankful that she could at least comfort the blonde now. Sasuke, however, didn't change much except for his paled complexion. A soft smile graced Naruto's face as she remembered him telling Mizuki that she would never act like Mizuki and was not the demon fox. Those words had given her the courage to stand up once again and face down Mizuki. She had used her newly learned jutsu, the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu, and had beaten the man into a near unrecognizable pulp. Then Iruka-sensei had given her his own Hite 8 ninja headband, and graduated her. Naruto had taken off his headband and softly smiled at it while running his thumb across its surface as he remembered that particular part. Today, she was going to see her Ji-chan and have a talk with him about the damn fox. He had sent an Anbu to ask her to come as soon as possible. She was glad he had chosen a female Anbu as she had just gotten out of the shower. Okay, that's one thing to ask Ji-chan about. Why the hell Anbu don't just knock on my door like everyone else instead of breaking in all the time? Naruto thought to herself as she approached the entrance to the Hokage Tower. Everyone looked at Naruto, Tenten voicing their thoughts. Did they really do that? Naruto scratched the back of his head. Just hubby, snake, haha. Hokage's office. Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sandame Hokage, Shinobi no Kami and surrogate grandfather to one Uzumaki Naruto, sat at his desk and wrestled with the once and future enemy of all Kage. The genin all leaned forward in anticipation. What was it that all Kage had so much trouble with? Paperwork. Everyone but Yuki faceplanted at the revelation, causing Yuki to chuckle before he continued. He was dressed in the white robes and ceremonial hat of the Hokage and had a weary, burdened look about him that had nothing to do with his advancing years. Naruto gave a sad smile when he heard that. He had seen that look too. It had been one of the reasons he wanted to become Hokage, to let his Jiji rest from all of the burdens. He just finished stamping, denied, on yet another request to have Naruto exiled from the village. This got many angry and disgusted looks from the genin, when his secretary let him know that the demon bitch had arrived. The angry looks got more intense as they felt even worse about Naruto's treatment and wondered if it was just as bad for their own Naruto. Thank you, Maya-san, Sarutobi said, barely keeping his anger in check. Also, please clear out your desk. You are fired. That certainly got some cheers, much to Yuki's amusement. His now ex-secretary stomped out grumbling under her breath and let Naruto in. Sarutobi smiled at his surrogate granddaughter fondly. Despite her use of that jutsu, her visits usually brightened his days considerably. Naruto was slightly shorter than most girls were at her age, which Sarutobi attributed to slight malnutrition. Naruto's flinch was not unnoticed by those around him, which drew even more worry and anger at how he was treated. Her eyes were a bright blue and glinted with barely concealed mischief. She had 3 small scar-like marks on each cheek and a button nose. Her hair was a strange mix of both her father and mother. It was mostly blonde like Minato's hair, but had red highlights mixed in like Kushina's hair, and it seemed like the more she grew up, the more red appeared in her hair. Currently it was in a ponytail that stretched to the middle of her back. Around her neck was her pair of dark green goggles. A picture of Naruto came up on the screen and Kiba whistled at her, before blushing as he realized just what he was doing. He thought that Naruto's Oiroke no Jutsu just make a naked bombshell, but if that's what Naruto truly looked like as a girl, damn. Hinata also blushed as thoughts about her doing things with a female Naruto started to fill her mind just as much as doing those same things with the Naruto sitting next to her did. Naruto was lost more on the fact that he just found out his parents' names after getting confirmation from Yuki. Minato and Kushina. Hinata had been the one to notice that Naruto had begun to tear up as he hugged his arms to himself, finally having something to go by for his parents. He accepted the hug Hinata gave him and actually leaned into her embrace, much to the girl's secret joy. Shikamaru was the only other person to notice the byplay and the wheels in his head began turning as he put everything together. Ji-chan, Naruko called exuberantly as she sat down on the chair in front of his desk. Naruko-chan, Sarutobi replied, restraining his instinctive impulse to wince at the kill-me-now orange jumpsuit she wore. Subdued, much to the shock of those who were just now seeing his state, Naruto muttered a low, "It's not that bad, is it?" Seriously, how this girl managed to infiltrate the Hyuga estate and replace all their underwear with pink thongs whilst wearing that thing baffled him. "I admit nothing," was the shout that interrupted the reading, getting looks of shock, either that he did or could do what was stated. A giggle from Hinata, Tenten falling over laughing, and Neji looking like the vein on the side of his forehead was either trying to burst or activate half of his Byakugan. "Ji-chan, why do the Anbu always break into my apartment?" Naruko asked bluntly. Sarutobi let the wince show this time. "They do that? Yup. The Anbu you sent to fetch me this morning broke my window lock while I was in the shower and scared the crap out of me when I got out," Naruko said with a scowl. "I see," Sarutobi replied. "That was hubby, Snake, today, wasn't it?" Yuki smirked. He could see the scowl on Naruto's face form the confirmation that it was in fact the Anbu he had been talking about earlier. Gazing at his sister's section in the way only he and his family could do here, Yuki let his smirk grow when he saw that Kurenai had figured out who the hubby Anbu was and was reprimanding Anko. Turning his gaze up to his brother's section, the same realization seemed to be causing Hiruzen to be rubbing his temples in an attempt to drive off the coming headache. "Yup, I'll have a word with her," Sarutobi promised, "but for now, I suspect that you have some questions about your tenant." Naruko's face fell slightly at the mention of the Kyuubi, but nodded. "Hi, Ji-chan, Mizuki Teme." She spat the traitor's name out as if it was rotten food, said that I was the fox, that all those deaths 12 years ago were my fault. Shikamaru had just put the final piece of the puzzle that was Naruto's treatment by the villagers into place upon hearing that, as had Shino, and it disgusted them how stupid the villagers were acting when it came to Naruto. It was only a matter of time now for the rest to truly get it. Sarutobi interrupted her furiously. "No, you are Uzumaki Naruko, genin of Konoha and container of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, not the beast itself," he said firmly, making a mental note to have Ibiki and Anko have a discussion with the former Chunin about mentally tormenting his surrogate granddaughter. You could almost hear Anko's cheers from here. "Oh, okay, Ji-chan," Naruko replied, looking slightly relieved. "But then, why do the villagers hate me so much?" "Because, to be blunt, they don't have the slightest clue about what they're talking about," Sarutobi told her bluntly. "Huh?" was what slipped from a majority of the genin. Seeing the blank look on his audience's face, he expanded on his explanation. When the Yondaime Hokage sealed the fox into you, he used an esoteric and difficult branch of the shinobi arts called Fuinjutsu. Using Fuinjutsu, anything is possible as long as you have the right formula. Unfortunately, as most shinobi prefer to use ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu or bukajutsu, weapons jutsu, rather than a complex and hard-to-understand art like Fuinjutsu, no one could explain precisely what the Yondaime had done. Sarutobi held up a hand as Naruko looked as if she were about to interject. After she settled down again, he continued. What further complicated the matter were the exact seals he used to seal the Kyuubi. There are at least two, and I suspect there are more. The first was the Shiki Fujin, Reaper Death Seal. The second was the Hake Fuin, 8 trigram seal, which is made of 2 Shisho Fuin, 4 symbol seals. Sakura, in a rare attempt to get to know her teammate, spoke up. Just how many seals keep the Kyuubi in there? Yuki thought for a moment and began to count them both out loud and on his fingers. The Shiki Fujin. which is powered by the god of death himself, the Hake no Fuin Shiki. Naruto acts as a living seal himself, as it's his will that keeps them going technically. The Kyuubi cannot break them, but Naruto could remove them. The fourth seal is a failsafe that resets the main seal back to the strength it had when it was first placed should Naruto use 8 tails of the Kyuubi's chakra. Then there's another failsafe that activates when he opens the cage, usually in an attempt to take full control of the Kyuubi and its chakra. So roughly 5 seals. Sakura shook a little and nodded at the information. The smarter rookies were realizing just how much of a genius the fourth truly was. Even the least complicated of these seals is way over the heads of an untrained civilian, so they act as humans often do. Distrust what they don't understand. As I remember from somewhere, a person is smart, people are stupid. Naruko's face was an embodiment of anger. And the shinobi? She demands. There had to have been someone who understood Fuinjutsu other than Yondaime-sama. There was and is. Sarutobi acknowledged. My own student, Jiraiya of the Sannin, is now Konoha's last remaining seal master. Unfortunately, Jiraiya-kun is rarely in Konoha because he is in charge of our spy network, which requires him to be on the move on a frequent basis. That meant he wasn't in Konoha during the attack of the Kyuubi and, sadly, he couldn't tell the idiot civilians how they were disrespecting both the wishes and the abilities of the Yondaime with every cry for your death. Yeesh, Yuki thought, can't wait until we get past this part, the solemn atmosphere is getting brutal. Great, just great, Naruko said bitterly, so no matter what I do, I'm screwed. Her eyes shone with tears she refused to shed. Hinata threw herself into giving her crush a hug, and let her tears drip onto his shoulder while others looked on at the blonde. Just hearing more and more of this was making them feel even worse. I would have to disagree with you there, Naruko-chan. Sarutobi said gently. Iruka's parents died during the day of the Kyuubi. He now sees you for who you are. Ichiraku Tuchi and Ayame have known the truth of what you contain for years, and they see you for who you are as well. As for me, I have never seen you as anything other than who you are. Naruto gave Hinata a hug as he felt a new emotion build up in his chest, one that he hadn't had enough time experiencing to figure out what it was. However, alongside it, he felt happy at hearing those names. Naruko scoffed softly. 4 people out of an entire village? The longest journeys often begin with the smallest of steps. Sarutobi told the depressed Kunoichi. Keep persevering and I don't doubt that you will become the Hokage. Do you really believe I can do it, Ji-chan? Naruko asked in a small voice, her eyes locked onto his own desperately. Seeing that look on the screen, and the matching one on Naruto's face was too much and forced a couple of them to look away in guilt. I hold no doubts, Sarutobi replied softly. Naruko wiped at her eyes for a moment, then gave him one of her trademark foxy grins. Thanks Ji-chan, she said in a voice more like her own. Sarutobi waved the thanks off. Privately, he was very relieved. By the looks of things, he had nipped that line of self-doubt in the bud just in time. The last thing the girl needed was an existential crisis on top of the pressures of being a new genin. Now, to return to the seals are designed to allow you to draw upon the chakra of the Kyuubi and use it as your own. Sarutobi told Naruko solemnly. What? Naruko yelped, disgust on her face. If I use that chakra, the villagers will hate me even more. The others seemed to subconsciously nod in agreement. Ah, well, there is no way for you to access the chakra at the moment. Sarutobi replied. Sakura seemed to sputter. But, didn't he just say? Naruko responded with a quizzical expression on her face, but you just said. At the moment, the seal is fully tightened. Sarutobi explained. It only permits you to access the chakra of the demon fox when you truly believe your life to be in mortal danger. Sakura seemed to slump. Oh. Naruko seemed taken aback. Ino gave Sakura a nudge. Look at that forehead, you've even started to think the same. Only to get a punch to the shoulder in reply. Once I believe you have sufficient maturity and skills, I'll get Jiraiya-kun to teach you how to harness the power of the fox. Sarutobi told her. I am skilled. Naruko protested with a cute pout. I learned the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Yes, an impressive feat, learning a B-rank kinjutsu in only 2 hours. Sakura latched onto this new piece of information. Wait, the Kage Bunshin is a kinjutsu? Yuki nodded in return, yup, and is usually forbidden for those with less than Junin reserves to even learn, much less use. However, Naruto has not only more chakra than the Hokage. His own Uzumaki heritage means that all of that chakra is dense enough that he can make more clones than anyone in history, having made around 1,000 when he used it against Mizuki. The chakra cost aside, it also returns all of its memories back to the creator when they dispel along with any chakra they don't use. This means that while Naruto can use it to learn pretty much anything really quickly, he needs to be careful because he could kill himself if he dispels them too quickly. 1,000 with only a couple of minutes at most seems to be okay, but any longer than that and you may need to dispel them 2 or 3 at a time. Naruto. He said that last part while looking at the boy in question. They also don't transfer any real muscle memory, but they will speed it up, so you can use them to train your taijutsu, but anything physical you have to do yourself. He waited for the blonde to nod in agreement before going back to the story. Sarutobi acknowledged, the ease with which you infiltrated the Hokage Tower was equally impressive. I must ask you to write down how you did it. If you do, I'll pay you for the successful completion of a B-rank infiltration mission, in addition to your A-rank mission of retrieving the Forbidden Scroll of Seals. Naruto pouted, he never got that himself. Yuki smirked, he could see Hiruzen smacking his head for forgetting to do that. Hell yeah, Naruto cheered, 2 high-ranking missions before I'm even out of the academy. Beat that, Sasuke Teme. Sakura and Ino shouted at Naruto, Baka. Why do you call Sasuke-kun that? Sasuke scowled at Naruto when he answered, because he treats everything as beneath him for the sole reason that he's an Uchiha. As if that makes him Kami's gift to Earth. Yuki chimed in, not to be a spoiler or anything, but an Uchiha was responsible for the Kyuubi's attack on Konoha, so if anything they aren't all that they're cracked up to be. Sakura and Ino scowled further at the new information, not liking that it didn't fit in with their worldview. On the other hand, Sarutobi continued, you are neither able to perform the basic Bunshin no Jutsu, clone jutsu, at all, nor can you use any genjutsu. Although the last is an unfortunate side effect of housing your tenant, the first is solvable. Yuki had to hold back his laughter at seeing the puppy dog eyes that Naruto had right when he heard that last part. How? That damn jutsu was the bane of my life. Naruto asked, her eyes boring into her grandfatherly figure. This must have been what I looked like when I asked Minato-kun how he finished his paperwork so quickly. Sarutobi chuckled to himself. Naruto-chan, please perform the Bunshin no Jutsu. If my suspicions are correct, I will be able to help you. He told the exited girl, who drooped slightly at the request. Please don't laugh, okay? Ji-chan? She mumbled as she ran through the seals for the basic clone jutsu taught at the academy. Bunshin no Jutsu. She called as a puff of smoke appeared next to her, which revealed a sick and unhealthy-looking clone of Naruto. Sarutobi nodded. Just as I thought. What? Naruto asked. Could there really be a solution? What is it, Datbeo? You are suffering the same problem the rest of the Uzumaki clan suffered from. Your chakra is so dense and powerful that attempting E and D rank jutsu is incredibly difficult. Sarutobi explained, I would suggest you use the same amount of chakra, but try to make as many clones as possible with that chakra. Naruto's eyes widened as he slowly slipped out of Hinata's grasp and walked over to an open space next to where they were reading. He went through the hand signs and shouted the technique, Bunshin no Jutsu. The others watched in anticipation, except for Sasuke, who didn't care, and Neji, who still had a stick up his ass and figured the boy would still fail. Everyone but Yuki widened their eyes in shock as the smoke cleared, showing off the countless Naruto clones. This was followed by Hinata passing out from a nosebleed that rocketed her backwards into the couch's embrace. Ino was shocked like the others, however, upon finding something wet on her lip and finding out she had a nosebleed as well, she quickly wiped away the blood to hide it. She didn't have feelings for the blonde, did she? She must have been thinking of countless Sasukes. Yeah, that's it. Okay, Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto called out again, this time filling the room with smoke. Once Sarutobi opened a window and dispersed the chakra smoke with an E-rank futon jutsu, futon. Soyokaze, wind style. Gentle breeze. The entire room was covered in Naruto clones. Just like Kushina. Sarutobi thought with a smile as Naruto started dancing in celebration of vanquishing her nemesis. Naruto was busy doing the same thing, getting giggles from Hinata once she woke back up. Sarutobi then dispelled the illusory clones with a small chakra pulse. "Naruko-chan, calm down please," Sarutobi called. Still grinning like a Cheshire cat, Naruko retook her seat. Now, that was an example of a little creative thinking in dealing with an obstacle. Sarutobi informed Naruko, "Regrettably, the next problem will be harder to fix." Naruko's face fell slightly. "My taijutsu," she whispered. Naruto's face fell as well as he sat back down on the couch. Hinata immediately took her spot in comforting her crush, forgetting how she must look as she rested her head on his shoulder. "Yes," Sarutobi told her bluntly. "I was watching the clearing last night when you took care of Mizuki. It was full of openings and incorrect stances. Who taught you your taijutsu?" Naruto slumped down into his seat as the others looked at him. "Mizuki tilde," mumbling out the answer. Naruko looked down and fiddled with the hem of her jacket. "Mizuki Teme," she replied quietly. Getting the same answer from both the story and right next to them, some of the rookies began plotting revenge against the close-minded traitor. Sarutobi sighed. So, not only had Mizuki tricked and mentally tormented Naruko, he had tried to ensure that she would be killed on her first C-rank mission due to poor close combat skills. This earned some scowls as the revenge for their fellow genin got more violent in their minds. Once again, Sarutobi made a note to have his two best interrogators educate Mizuki in why you do not piss off the Kami no Shinobi. The genin straightened in shock as Anko's cheer sounded from seemingly nowhere, actually being loud enough to breach the separation. "Fortunately, I have decided that it is time for you to learn about your mother, Naruko-chan," Sarutobi told her, then braced for loud noises. Naruto was on the edge of his seat, looking hopeful and was ready to take in everything he could about his mother. He wasn't disappointed there, as Naruko leapt to her feet and shrieked, "What?" at the top of her voice. Given that her normal volume was just under a shout, her top volume was almost loud enough to be considered a high D-rank jutsu. That got a few chuckles from everyone while Naruto just blushed. Wincing at the abuse his poor eardrums had just endured, Sarutobi attempted to calm Naruko down so he could explain everything to her. 10 minutes later, Sarutobi finally managed to get her calm and sitting in her seat again. "Now, this is your mother's file." Sarutobi gave the thin document into Naruko's trembling hands. She looked at it for a moment before taking a deep breath and opened it. She immediately noticed a very important fact about the file. "This is a shinobi registration file," Naruko exclaimed. She looked at the rank section. "Jonin? My mother was a Jonin?" "Indeed," Sarutobi said. "Kushina was one of the few S-rank kunoichi this village has ever produced. She could give the Yondaime himself a hard time in a spar when he didn't use his Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God Jutsu." Everyone was shocked upon hearing just how strong Naruto's mother was. "Kushina," Naruko said, testing the unfamiliar name warily. "Uzumaki Kushina, my mother." A smile grew on her face as she looked at the picture in the file. A smiling woman with blood-red hair and deep blue eyes looked back at her. Kushina's genin picture came up on the screen. Hinata leaned forward and gave Naruto a hug, lightly rubbing his opposite shoulder. "You look just like her." Naruto just gave a nod. If it weren't for the eye color and hair, he could pass as his mother's male counterpart. A small section caught Naruko's eye. "Clan status?" "Yes." "Village of origin?" "Uzu-Shiogakure." "I'm from a clan?" Naruko asked. "Wait, Ji-chan. You mentioned that I had the same problems as the Uzumaki clan had." Yuki held up his hand to stop the questions. "It explains in the story. The Uzumaki were allies of Konoha for over 50 years. Sarutobi said, they founded their own village on the Isle of Uzu not long after Konoha was founded and both villages prospered. The Shodem Hokage, Senju Hashirama, even married an Uzumaki called Mito, who is your great-great-aunt I believe. All members of the Uzumaki clan had immense stores of unusually dense chakra and had a lot of trouble with chakra control exercises as a result." Naruko smiled at her similarity to her clan, and then frowned. "You said, had. What happened?" Sarutobi sighed. This was not going to be pretty. At the start of the Third Great Shinobi War, Kirigakure, Iwagakure and Kumogakure launched a surprise attack on Uzushiogakure. Only those who were not within Uzushiogakure during the attack survived. "I'm sorry Naruko-chan," Sarutobi said softly. Naruko's eyes dimmed. "My clan is gone? Wiped out?" she asked bleakly. Naruto sunk backward into the couch, tears dripping down his cheeks. Everyone was saddened by this. Even the ever-detached Sasuke looked on at Naruto in sympathy. "I'm sorry to say so," Sarutobi confirmed. However, the three attacking villages suffered horrendous casualties at the hands of the Uzumaki. Kiba whistled in appreciation and tried to lighten the mood. "Man, imagine how much of a badass your clan must have been, Naruto." "Yay. That certainly did cheer him up a bit. Almost the entire village was related to the Uzumaki in some manner, so there were a lot of them. For every Uzumaki that fell, at least a dozen invaders fell at the same time. When the last sword was sheathed, a full 3/4 of the invading shinobi lay dead and dying among the ruins of Uzushiogakure. These casualties happened because Kiri, Iwa and Kumo gravely underestimated their foe and, in turn, these casualties, combined with the Yondaime Hokage's Hiraishin no Jutsu allowed Konoha to emerge victorious." The room was silent for a second. Kiba's reaction of, "Damn," was all that was said. No other response was needed. "So, my clan's sacrifice was one of the cause of Konoha's victory?" Naruko questioned. Sarutobi nodded. "Then why haven't we heard any of this in class? I know I'm no Sakura-chan, but I think I would have remembered mention of my own surname during a lesson, and I think my friends would have mentioned it as well." This got everyone curious. History might have been a little more exciting if something like that was brought up. Sarutobi smiled at her mention of friends. She had been friends with the Ino Shika Cho trio's children for years and was friendly with the Hyuga heiress as well. Hinata looked rather hopeful at that last part. He then frowned as the rest of what Naruko had said registered. What she said was true. He distinctly remembered adding the history of Uzushiogakure and the Uzumaki clan to the syllabus personally after the end of the war that had all but destroyed the once proud clan. This brought back the frowns as they realized how far the idiots in the village had gone to try and destroy Naruto, either physically, mentally or emotionally. "That is an excellent question, Naruko-chan. I'll look into it," Sarutobi said slowly. "Anyway, the shinobi forces certainly remember the Uzumaki clan. We wear the clan symbol as a mark of friendship and remembrance." The Shoden integrated the symbol into the Konoha leaf symbol so that the Uzumaki would be impossible to forget. Naruko grabbed the Uzumaki spiral that hung from her shoulder and held onto it tightly. After a moment, she whispered, "Arigato, Ji-chan. The Uzumaki deserve all I have done for them and more." Sarutobi said sincerely, "The reason I bring your family up is because they have their own taijutsu style. Not to mention their own kenjutsu style and clan jutsu." This definitely got Naruto's attention. "I had originally intended to wait until you were a chunin to even tell you about your mother's family, but with what happened with Mizuki, I decided that you deserved to inherit this early." The young Kunoichi's eyes were swimming with tears. Thank you, Ji-chan," she rasped. Sarutobi smiled gently as he got up and walked to a part of the wall that looked no different from the rest. His hands blurred as he hit 16 points in a specific order in under 10 seconds, causing a section of the wall to fall down, revealing a safe door. Placing his hand on the door, Sarutobi sent a pulse of his chakra through it. A series of clicks, clanks and whirring sounds came from within the door, which popped open. Naruko craned her neck to see into the safe. The only things in the safe were 3 boxes. One red, one yellow and one orange. They were about half the length of the Forbidden Scroll. Sarutobi took the red and orange boxes out before closing the safe again. Shikamaru spoke up for the first time. "So if Naruto's the orange one, and his mother's the red one, does that mean the yellow one is his father's?" This got everyone's attention as Yuki nodded in response. Sarutobi handed Naruko the boxes. After attempting to juggle them for a minute, Naruko made a pair of shadow clones to hold them. "Don't open them until you're in your apartment," Sarutobi warned Naruko, who nodded. She knew that clan styles and jutsu were protected by law, but most ninja operated under the rule, finders keepers. Boom! Yuki smirked. He had used a sound effect at that part and it made all 12 of them jump in response. "What the hell was that?" came the simultaneous response from Ino and Tenten. A massive explosion bloomed in the village, causing a startled Naruto to shield the Hokage and draw a kunai by instinct. After a moment, Naruto lowered her guard when no further explosions came. Anbu, Sarutobi called, prompting his 4 bodyguards to apparently teleport into the room. Find out what and where that explosion was. Go. The Anbu vanished in puffs of smoke. I have got to learn how to do that. Naruto muttered to herself as she sheathed the kunai she had drawn. Catch, Sarutobi said and tossed Naruto a standard-sized scroll. That has the basics of the Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker jutsu, on it. A reward for your quick reflexes. Yes, Naruto cheered. She quickly deposited the scroll in one of her jacket's many pockets. She jumped slightly as another Anbu appeared in a swirl of leaves. Inu, dog. The Hokage greeted the Anbu with a terse nod. Hokage-sama. The explosion originated at the building that Uzumaki-san used to live in. It is now merely rubble, with minor damage to the surrounding buildings and a few minor injuries to passing civilians. Inu reported briskly. Naruto slid off the couch and onto the floor. No, my home. He was rather unresponsive as Hinata moved onto his lap. Her only thought were of comforting the distraught blonde. No, my home? Naruto said hollowly, falling to her knees at the revelation that her home of 7 years was gone. Sarutobi dismissed Inu and knelt next to Naruto. Don't worry Naruko-chan. None of your stuff was in the house when it exploded. Huh? Naruto looked up with a bit of hope at Yuki as he read that line. What did that mean? Huh? Naruto looked at the Hokage blankly. Yuki looked at Naruto. I thought I was reading here. Naruto blushed while the others were chuckling lightly. After you left this morning, Anbu operatives removed all of your possessions from the apartment and took it to your new residence. Sarutobi explained. New, huh? Naruto said, her expression puzzled. When you defeated Mizuki, you defeated the last of the small, and relatively unknown, Toji clan. Sarutobi explained, that alone would have won you all of his ninja gear. Add in the fact he was about to become a nuke nin after stealing the scroll of seals, and you won all he owned including his house and any shares in businesses he had. It is your right as the member of a clan to take possession of all he once owned. Wa? Naruto looked confused, as did most of the others. Yuki looked over to them. That's one of the main differences of this world we're reading compared to the one you're used to. I do believe that it will explain those laws in the story though. I won his house? Naruto said disbelievingly. Indeed, I, acted in advance of your knowledge of the laws because I thought it would make a nice graduation present. Sarutobi's face twisted sourly. Now it's far more a necessity than anything else, meaning I still owe you a graduation present. Thinking for a minute, Sarutobi's face brightened. Aha, I know what to give you. Sarutobi stood, made 5 hand signs, drew some blood then slammed his hand on the floor. Kuchiyose no Jutsu Sarutania, Enki. Summoning Jutsu Monkey Blacksmith, Enki. He shouted. A plume of chakra smoke appeared where the Hokage slammed his hand and cleared to reveal a white and brown monkey about Naruto's height, wearing a leather apron, gloves and an eye patch over his left eye. His upper body was bulging with muscles and had a no-nonsense air about him. Sarutobi, why have you summoned me? The monkey asked in a rasping voice. Enki, I would like the gauntlet if you please. Sarutobi said politely. This got some confused looks and a, be patient, look from Yuki. The monkey made an odd sound that Naruto thought might be a laugh. Why do you need that old thing? He asked the Hokage. It rejected you. For Naruko-chan. The Hokage replied, indicating Naruto with a small gesture. She just graduated from the academy and I thought it would make an excellent gift. Enki looked Naruto up and down and snorted dismissively. I doubt she has the reserves to even put the thing on, let alone use it. Oi, Naruto said, a tick mark appearing on her head. I have so much chakra that I have to make hundreds of regular bunchins in order for the damn jutsu to work. Whatever it is you're talking about, I can handle it datbeo. The monkey raised his only visible eyebrow at the anger Naruto put in her voice. You really shouldn't say that until you know what you're talking about, Kozo, brat. The item Sarutobi wishes to give you doesn't work for people who do not have the right skills, chakra and mindset. It is my best creation, only one person in the last 30 years has worn the damn thing, and she died using it. Since then, no one has been able to even put it on, even Sarutobi here. That got some raised eyebrows. Given how thick the book was, that meant that Naruto succeeded in doing something not even the Hokage could do. I won't die until I become Hokage. Naruto said stubbornly, so bring it on, Enki-san. Enki studied her for a moment before nodding. Okay, Kozo. But don't say I didn't warn ya. He disappeared in a puff of smoke. Now we wait, Sarutobi told Naruto. He sat back down at his desk and fought his enemy once again while he waited. Naruto dispelled her clones as she now had to wait here for a while but still threw longing glances at the boxes that held her heritage. A puff of smoke signaled Enki's return. He was holding a box that was just over a foot long and half that wide. He placed it on the floor before him reverently and motioned Naruto to sit opposite him. I swore 20 years ago that no one beneath the rank of Jonin would ever even try to wear this gauntlet again. Enki said solemnly, now, I find myself breaking my word to myself. Enki removed the lid slowly to reveal one of the most beautiful things Naruto had ever seen. It was a gauntlet, similar to a samurai's, but far more ornamented. Made from finely wrought steel, it was covered in fighting monkeys, with a snarling monkey head over the part that protected the back of the hand. Just behind where the wrist was, the armor was bronze and seemed to be able to rotate. The genin were in awe when the gauntlet's picture appeared on the screen. Behold, Enki whispered hoarsely, Eno Kagote, the gauntlet of the Monkey King. Naruto turned the page and began to read again, Chapter 2, Team Assignments. The next day, Council Chamber, Hokage Tower. Sarutobi pinched the bridge of his nose wearily. Kami, these council meetings gave him more headaches than Naruto's pranks. Yuki nodded, and that's saying something. Naruto gave a nod of agreement, which drew the odd look from most of the others. For the last time, Uzumaki Naruto's graduation is permitted as a special exemption due to her mastering a B-rank Kenjutsu, stopping a traitor from fleeing with the Scroll of Seals and saving the life of her teacher from the traitor. He shouted at the group of people seated to his left, the civilian part of the council. But Hokage-sama, she's a demon, a rather stupid councilman protested. The rest of the civilian council fell silent and edged away from the idiotic man. They all knew what was going to happen now. Yuki then paused and decided to make a random comment. Am I the only one that seems to think that the stupider the person in Konoha, the more they hate Naruto? This got a couple of hands to raise in agreement. Sarutobi glared at the man and unleashed his ki, making his target cower away from him and lose control of his bladder. As everyone in this room is aware of Naruto's status as a Jinchuriki, I cannot have you executed. Sarutobi spoke in an angry whisper that echoed in the now silent room. However, if you ever dare refer to Naruto as a demon ever again in my presence, you shall join Mizuki and Anbuti in ice custody and suffer everything he has gone through at the hands of Mitarashi Anko and Morino Ibiki. Am I understood? Hi, Hokage-sama. The now terrified man quavered. Good, Sarutobi said in a more normal tone of voice. You are excused from the council today as I believe you need to get a change of undergarments, among other things. This got chuckles and giggles from the genin. The man glowed red with humiliation, but got up and squelched his way out of the council chamber. The laughter turned a big green as the sound effect played over the television speakers. Sarutobi sighed and glanced around. Does anyone else have a point to bring up about Naruto's graduation before we move on to the next topic? He asked. I do, said a man wearing black clothes and bandages and had his arm in a sling. Sarutobi sighed. He should have known. No, Danzo. I will not let you turn Naruto into an emotionless killing machine. He told his old teammate. It would be for the best, Hiruzen. Danzo insisted. Give her to me, and I shall forge from her a weapon of unparalleled strength to protect Konoha. I said no, Danzo. Do not push your luck. Sarutobi warned him, Naruto is already absolutely loyal to Konoha and I will not allow you to destroy her emotions just because you feel they get in the way. Now drop it. Very well Hiruzen, but I warn you that you will regret not taking my advice. She will go out of control and you will wish that you had listened to me. Danzo said genially. Naruto scowled. What's his problem? Yuki looked over at them to make sure he had their attention. First off, he has been stewing in rage over not being made the third Hokage for a long time, and while he may claim to be doing everything he does for Konoha, that Konoha is one where he rules with an iron fist and not the current one. The only reason he wants to train Naruto is solely so he has a weapon to use against the third Hokage and any of Konoha's enemies. What he fails to realize is that if you actually went through with the whole destroying your emotions thing, the seal would break almost immediately and release the Kyuubi, because if you remember, I had stated that it's your will that keeps the other seals working, and if you trained under him, you would have no will. Yuki then turned towards Sasuke. He's also at least partially responsible for the Uchiha massacre, and he looted the corpses of many Uchiha afterwards for their Sharingan, getting them grafted onto that arm he keeps wrapped up. That got Sasuke's attention. Also Sasuke, Danzo had attacked Shisui and stolen one of his Sharingan for the sole purpose for getting the Mangekyo he had, which would allow him to use the ultimate hypnotism genjutsu Koto Amatsukami. Drawing away from that, some sources state that Itachi didn't kill your mother, but your father did, trying to get the Mangekyo for himself. But I have no idea if that last one is true or not. Sasuke nodded and clenched his fist. His rage had a new target, and his adoration of his father had taken a major hit, as did the hatred of his brother, if only a little. He would find out what really happened that night. Sarutobi gave his old friend a hard look before asking once again if anyone had anything further to add about Naruto before moving on to the next item on the agenda. No one? Good. The next item is the proposal I made, in which the new Genin teams, once they have been passed by their Jonin sensei of course, will be moved into the same apartment and learn to live together. Opinions? What's the point? Asked a civilian. I mean, why bother to move them out of their parents' homes when they're only 12? Sarutobi was surprised at such a stupid question. Then he remembered this was a civilian he was talking to. Firstly, although newly graduated genin are only 12 or 13, once they receive their Hite-8, they are considered adults in the eyes of the village, as you should be well aware, Satoshi-san. Sarutobi said, looking pointedly at the man who had asked the question. Tenten decided to voice her opinion. Why were people this stupid even on the council? Yuki responded in kind. Well, there are various theories. Some think that they are technically the best for the position, which just makes the rest sound even worse. The other is that they bribe and blackmail others to keep their position, proving just how corrupt they actually are. Secondly, I believe that it should help improve teamwork. Living together and working together should help the teams bond more quickly and thus raise the speed of their on-the-job efficiency. Third, having to pay for utilities out of their mission pay and standard genin pay will teach them a sense of responsibility and maturity that will be needed on C rank and above missions, not to mention the Chunin selection exams. Sarutobi finished his explanation and looked around to see the council's reaction. The ninja side was nodding approvingly. Except Nara Shikaku, but that was just because he was asleep as always. That got some snickers from everyone but Shikamaru, who looked a bit peeved at his father for that. The advisors, Kaharu and Homura, were also nodding in approval. Danzo looked Sarutobi in the eye and shrugged indifferently. The civilian side was having a whispered debate that seemed to be leaning towards accepting the proposal. Does the council feel that a decision can be reached today? Sarutobi inquired. Seeing a majority of them agree, the aged Hokage said, very well. All those in favor of the proposal, raise your hands. The vast majority of the room raised their hands, drawing dirty looks from a couple of civilians. All those against? A small group of stubborn civilians raised their hands. The proposal is accepted by the majority. Sarutobi declared, starting with this graduating class, the Genin Housing Act is in force. The meeting continued after that, with nothing of interest coming up. After it ended, Sarutobi was surprised to see the Inoshika Cho, Hyuga Hiyashi as well as Councilwoman Haruno in his office. This is an unsurprising gathering that I should have anticipated. Sarutobi mused aloud. Might I assume your children have something to do with it? Ino was very insistent on finding out what happened to Naruto. Yamanaka Inoichi said dryly. Of course I would, Ino said with a huff, as if daring anyone to doubt her. My troublesome son set my wife on me when I said it was too troublesome to find out. Shikaku groused. Shikamaru smirked at finally getting back at his father for something. Choji was wondering why Naruto never showed up to their weekly ramen eating contest. Akamichi Choza said. Choji gave a nod as he ate some of his chips. My daughter heard about Naruko-chan's house being blown up and was concerned. Haruno Megumi added. Naruto gave a soft smile to Sakura. Thanks Sakura-chan. Sakura gave him the same smile back, maybe Naruto isn't that bad. My eldest was so worried about Naruto that she forgot to hold back against Hanabi and defeated her soundly. Hiyashi said, a hint of pride in his voice. Hinata was surprised at how warmly her father was sounding there. Sarutobi sealed the room with a couple of well-placed seals. Before speaking, what is said here is to be kept absolutely confidential. Understood? He said firmly, looking at each person and getting a nod. Naruto's apartment building was destroyed by a large number of explosive tags placed at key structural locations to ensure both the collapse of the building and the death of anyone in the top floor. Where Naruto's apartment was located, Shikaku finished in a drawling tone. Troublesome. So that means that at least one shinobi is in on it. That earned the return of the scowls. They were not liking how far they were going to try and kill Naruto like that. The Anbu who investigated the scene reported that an estimate of at least 500 explosive tags were used to destroy the building. That got a shout of surprise from Tenten. She gave the impression that if it wasn't for the fact it was used in a murder attempt, she would have complained about how much of a waste it was. Far more than was needed considering it was teetering on the verge of being condemned due to lack of necessary maintenance. 100 would have been more than enough. Sarutobi added, that is a lot of explosive tags. Inoichi remarked, I don't think that Konoha has had that many tags in reserve since the death of the Yondaime. We don't, the Sandame stated. We have barely 150 tags in reserve, and only about 30 are made a month from an old man who is of only passable skill. From the remains of a few of the tags, we have determined that only a few were his work, with the rest being either the Yondaime's work or fairly amateurish homemade attempts. I have also had the reserves checked and they are untouched. Therefore, I then turned to the only shop in Konoha that sells them. According to their records, Anbu buys 10 a month, with various Jonin and Chunin buying most of the others. Interestingly enough, one person has bought about 5 to 7 a month since the stores the Yondaime made were emptied, in addition to purchasing 50 a month from the Yondaime's stores since the Yondaime's death. Who was it? Megumi asked. Yamanaka Haruo. The Sandame said. Inoichi looked sick. Ino paled upon hearing that the one in question was a member of her family. That is unsurprising, Inoichi said faintly. His mother was the only Yamanaka to die on the day of the Kyuubi. Yes, although strangely enough, he has not been seen near Naruko-chan's building at all in the past 7 years since she moved there. Sarutobi said with a frown, this leads me to conclude he had accomplices. I have assigned a pair of Anbu to shadow him, as well as questioning Naruko's Anbu watchers to list everyone who entered Naruko's old home and how frequently. It did not take a single hour to set those tags and I will find out who did it. Speaking of Naruko, where is she? Choza asked. Sarutobi smirked. Oh, she's getting settled into her new house. Same time. The former Toji clan home, clan residential district. Sheesh, this place is cool and everything, but it's filthy. Naruko muttered as she scrubbed the wooden floor with a cloth. She generally wasn't a neat freak, but according what Ji-chan had told her when he brought her here last night, the Toji clan had been reduced to a single family during the Third Great War, who had then moved into the main ninja residential district. Wait, that Teme was a member of a clan? Naruto asked with an incredulous tone. Yuki gave a shake of the hand, indicating the iffy answer. Sometimes, generally though he's seen as from a solo family, mainly because nobody really knows what his last name is. Some of the others went to speak up on the former teacher's name, however they all stopped when they realized they didn't know his family name was. Mizuki Teme had been the only one to survive the Kyuubi's attack on Konoha and he had lived in the academy barracks, so the place hadn't been lived in for at least 20 years and was in desperate need of a good clean. Arrrrgghh. Naruko threw the cloth down in frustration. I've been at this for over 5 hours and barely scratched the surface. I haven't even had a chance to look at my family's scrolls. I need help. Suddenly an idea popped into her head and she made the clone hand sign. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, she called and summoned 30 exact copies of herself. Everyone looked at Naruto, mostly with a deadpan. Leave it to Naruto to use a high-level jutsu for chores. Alright ladies, Naruko said putting her hands on her hips, we have a house to clean and it isn't going to clean itself. Split up and clean this place until it goes ping. Start in the living quarters and work your way to the rest of the compound. Yes ma'am, her doppelgangers chorused before splitting up and spreading throughout the house. Naruko grinned to herself. This jutsu was so useful. Now everyone was jealous. Stupid chakra requirement. That thought actually stopped her for a moment. Come to think of it, this jutsu was in the Forbidden Scroll of Seals. There should be a reason for that. I'll ask Ji-chan when he comes to visit this afternoon. Everyone just deadpanned at Naruto again, making him squirm in his seat. It was just like the boy to not read through simple instructions. Shaking her head slightly, Naruko wandered into the living room that she had cleaned over an hour ago and sat down on the sofa with a sigh. A metallic clinking noise drew her attention to the gauntlet she now wore on her right arm. Raising her arm, she admired the way the light shone on the metal as she remembered what had happened in the Hokage's office the previous day. Flashback. Eno Kagote? Naruko breathed, entranced by the beautiful gauntlet. Yes, Enki said solemnly, as I said, my finest work. I am one of the 2 master blacksmiths of the Monkey Clan. I forge armor, my counterpart forges weapons. I created this gauntlet for King Enma, the Monkey King, as a tithe of sorts. Tithe? Naruko asked, baffled. Something similar to a tax. Sarutobi simplified for her. Indeed. Enki agreed, however, King Enma couldn't wear it, as it required far too much chakra for him to do so. Enma is my personal summon, Naruko-chan. Sarutobi explained, seeing her incomprehension. He is the boss summon of the Monkey Clan, therefore the most powerful of them all. Naruko's eyes widened. Someone on the same level as Yondaime-sama's summon Gamabunta wasn't able to wear this gauntlet? She asked in awe. Sakura looked crossed between in awe and incredulous, and yet, Naruko could? Just how much chakra do you have, Naruto? Both Naruto and Yuki just smiled and smirked in reply. Enki snorted. Enma-sama is far older and more experienced than Gamabunta. He whipped all the summons of the Sannin, Gamabunta, Katsuya and Manda, at the same time during a sparring session. The genin had heard how big and strong the 3 Sannin summons were, and hearing this monkey say that Enma has the ability to beat all 3 of them at the same time. They had a lot of respect for the Monkey King after that. Naruko's eyes widened further. Sarutobi grinned. Let's bring him here so we can see his reaction when Naruko-chan here does what he could not. Enki recoiled, but nodded in acquiescence. Sarutobi weaved the summoning jutsu's hand signs again. Kachiyose. Enku. Enma. Summoning. Monkey King. Enma. In a puff of smoke, a man-sized monkey wearing a tiger-skin kimono, a black shinobi suit and a Konoha Hite ate. He had white fur all over his body and had a long goatee and sideburns. Seeing how small the Monkey King was, and he was still able to beat 3 boss summons. That definitely earned some badass points from the boys. Hiruzen, why have you summoned me when there is no battle or training to be done? Enma asked after looking around for a moment. Enma. Sarutobi greeted his summon genially. I brought you here to see an end to our little wager. He gestured to the open box and the gaping Naruko. That thing? Enma snorted. There is no way that she can wear it, even as she does have the Kyuubi sealed inside her. Naruko recoiled. How? Enma and I arrived just as the Yondaime sealed the fox into you. Sarutobi replied, don't worry. Enma is very knowledgeable about the ninja arts, and beasts of similar power to the Kyuubi have been sealed away before. Those villagers still don't know the difference between a scroll and the kunai that's sealed in it? Enma asked. At a single nod from Sarutobi, Enma snorted again and muttered something under his breath before turning to Naruko. Kid, I have nothing against you. You were barely an hour old when the damn fox was sealed into you, and the Yondaime would not have picked you if he did not think you could handle it. Ignore the villagers and trust what Sarutobi here says. He knows you, they don't. Enma told the girl bluntly. Arigato, Enma-sama. Naruko said softly. Then she cocked her head to the side and looked at Enma for a moment. Naruto looked at the screen, squinting as he muttered out loud, "Ya no, he looks kinda familiar. I could swear that I've seen you before, Enma-sama, but I can't think where." She confessed with a small frown. Hey, remember me? Hardly surprising. Enma chuckled. Hiruzen summoned me to guard you when you were still a baby and he had to go off to a council meeting. Some idiot Chunin tried to kill you and I took care of him. I would guard you when Hiruzen here was out of the village, discreetly, right up until you were about 5. You probably caught glimpses of me and that's why you recognize me a bit. Naruto hit his fist into his palm in realization. Oh. So that's where I've seen him before. That got some panicked looks from the others. He's been attacked even as a baby? And he acts like it's an everyday thing? Naruto bowed at Enma. Thank you for guarding me, Enma-sama. Wow, Kiba joked. I don't think I've ever heard that much respect coming from you, Naruto, except for maybe your Ramen-sama. He snarked at the end, getting a couple of chuckles and a blushing Naruto. Just doing my job, kid. Besides, those who attack younglings are scum and need to be removed from the world. Remember this, Enma replied. Hi. Naruto nodded. Enki, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. Ahem. Naruto-san, if you still wish to attempt this, please say so. He said in a formal tone that sounded weird in his rasping voice. Taking her cue from him, Naruto straightened slightly and said, I wish to proceed. Enki nodded and tapped the Eno Kagote in 3 different places. The rearmost plate, the section that seemed to be able to revolve, and the snarling ape's mouth. Where he touched, small holes opened up. Now, take a kunai and put a drop of blood into each hole. Enki directed. Shrugging, Naruto did so. As she dripped a drop into each hole, it closed up. Once the last hole was closed, the gauntlet began to glow a faint blue. What's happening? Naruto asked. The gauntlet is judging your worthiness. Enma replied, I made it past this stage, but failed the next one. How can you tell that it accepts you? The blonde kunoichi asked. Snick. Everyone looked at the gauntlet as the lower half snapped open. It does that. Enki replied in perfect deadpan. Yuki muttered to himself, smartass. Gesturing at the gauntlet, now you must simply put it on. What'll it do then? Naruto asked warily, not forgetting that this gauntlet had killed someone who was unworthy to wield it. Drain you of your chakra. Enki stated bluntly, you see, the Eno Kagote is technically an incomplete device at the moment. Until someone gives it sufficient chakra in a single sitting, it will never be complete. Why a single sitting? Sarutobi asked. That's how it turned out. Enki replied, I have since adjusted my methods to ensure this doesn't happen, but none since have had the potential that this one has. Naruto took a breath, released it, then picked up the gauntlet. Make sure you put it on your dominant arm. Enki warned. Nodding, Naruto carefully fitted the Eno Kagote to her right arm. Snick. The gauntlet closed around her arm and glowed red, then green, then a deep blue. Is it shrinking? Sarutobi asked curiously. Wait, what? Some of the group sputtered out upon hearing that. Yuki simply smirked. Seals can do anything given you have the right combination of symbols. The gauntlet was indeed shrinking to the right size for Naruto's arm. It did the same for me. Enma noted, Naruto, when you feel a sudden drain of your chakra, make the ram hand sign and move chakra into your right arm. Not a lot, just maintain a slow, steady stream. Right. Naruto nodded. A minute passed, then Naruto stiffened and then made the ram hand sign. Damn, this is more chakra than I've ever used before. Naruto grunted, sweat beading her brow with the effort. Abruptly, an Anbu appeared in the room, a hand on his ninjutsu. Hokage-sama, I detected an immense buildup of chakra here, he said. It is of no importance. Sarutobi told the Anbu, everything is under control. Return to your post. The Anbu vanished in a swirl of leaves. How long do I have to maintain this for? Naruto asked, returning everyone's attention to the struggling kunoichi. The process should be complete when the monkey engravings on the sides all turn from chakra metal to adamantine. Enki replied. Looking at the gauntlet closely, the watchers could see that the first 2 monkeys had changed from the bright shiny gray of the steel-like chakra metal to a hard matte black metal. So, 2 down, 10 to go? Naruto asked, getting a nod in return. Over the next half hour, 9 of the 10 remaining monkeys turned to adamantine. Impressive. Enma noted, I was only able to get to 7.5. This last 01 is more draining than the others. Naruto gasped out, it's almost like it's fighting me. Enki frowned, then realization lit his face. Naruto, it's the chakra of the others who have attempted to wear Eno Kagote, it's fighting you. If you fully claim possession of it, the chakra of those who came before you will cease to be. Naruto looked at him, startled. But, what about the person who died with this thing on? What if it's a ghost? Naruto started to shake. Ghost? Ino looked to her fellow blonde. You're afraid of ghosts? She looked like she wanted to tease him over this. Naruto nodded shakily. Why yeah. I mean you can't hit them, but they can hit and curse you. How do you fight that? Ino ran that information around in her mind. That was a decent rationalization for phasmophobia. Sweat drops appeared on every person, or ape, watching the kunoichi. Naruto, we've been over this before. Sarutobi said patiently, there are no such things as ghosts. What is fighting against you now is just chakra. Increase the rate of flow to your arm and it should be over soon. Alright. Naruto focused again and the watching shinobi and blacksmith could feel the flow of chakra become more rapid and so slowly, surely but relentlessly, the last monkey turned into adamantine. A long, drawn-out monkey howl emerged from the gauntlet as it began glowing a bright and vibrant blue that increased in intensity until no one could look at it. Then suddenly, the light was gone and the occupants of the room could see once more. Naruto looked at the Eno Kagote and saw that the snarling face on the front was also adamantine. You actually did it. Enki said, disbelief plain on his face. The last person who wore that was an experienced Jonin and yet you managed to. Who was she anyway, the last person to wear this gauntlet? Naruto asked, tapping the gauntlet with a finger. Her name was Sarutobi Miwa. The Sandaime said softly, she was a remarkable young woman, with considerable promise as a kunoichi. I'll remember her, Naruto promised. Sarutobi chuckled softly as he caught sight of one part of the gauntlet. By the looks of things, whoever receives the Eno Kagote after you will know you as well. Naruto sent a questioning look at Sarutobi, who pointed at the underside of the gauntlet. When Naruto looked, there were two sets of kanji engraved along the length of the gauntlet. One was Enki, the other was Uzumaki Naruko. Not entirely unexpected, Enma said with an amused look on his face at Naruko's stunned disbelief. You did help create it after all. But, Naruto tried to protest, but was interrupted by Enki. Kozo, I may have forged the thing, but it was your chakra that gave life to it. Enki held out a hand, nice working with you. Naruto shook hands on automatic, still stunned at having her name on an artifact that took so much of her chakra. Man, I am exhausted. She commented as she let go of Enki's hand and sat down, visibly tired. Naruko-chan, exactly how much chakra did you use? Sarutobi asked curiously. The blonde kunoichi shrugged. Dunno. A lot of it, I guess. Never felt chakra exhaustion, but from what I remember Iruka-sensei saying about how it feels, I've come pretty close to it just now. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow at this. Naruto had far more chakra than he himself did and she had come close to chakra exhaustion? Once again, everyone was taken back by just how much chakra Naruto had. Naruto turned to Enki. So, what the heck can this thing do anyway? If it needed so much chakra, it must do some cool stuff. That can wait until tomorrow, Naruko-chan. We have to go about finding a place for you to sleep tonight. Sarutobi interjected. Sounds fair to me, Enki said gruffly. This girl needs to lie down before she falls down. Same time tomorrow, Sarutobi? 3 days from now. Sarutobi corrected him. Naruko will be recuperating and getting her team assignment tomorrow and the real genin test the day afterwards. Enma nodded. Summon me as well Hiruzen. I have a part to play in this too. After Sarutobi agreed, the two summons bade Naruko farewell and disappeared back to their realm in 2 puffs of smoke. Flashback end. Naruko was jolted out of her thoughts by the sensation of one of her clones dispersing. Ji-chan's early, she muttered as she got up to meet her cage. Ah, Naruko-chan. Sarutobi called as he walked down the now pristine hallway. I believe I told you last night to take it easy. Naruko scratched the back of her head nervously. I am Ji-chan. I only made 30 clones. Only 30, she says. In my prime, I could make that many before passing out. Sarutobi thought wryly. Fair enough. He allowed, anyway, it's almost time for team assignments, so get cleaned up. Damn, Naruko yelped as she ran off. Sarutobi chuckled. Ah, to be that energetic again. A short while later, Naruko's classroom, Konoha Ninja Academy. About time, Kiba half-shouted as he threw his arms into the air. I thought it would never get to us. Ino pig, get away from Sasuke-kun, shouted a pink-haired girl wearing a red battle dress. TCH, you first forehead girl, replied a platinum blonde wearing a purple top and skirt, bandages and cream arm warmers. The two girls were standing next to an empty seat that was in turn next to a raven-haired boy with onyx eyes wearing a blue top, white shorts and cream arm warmers. The boy currently had a large tick mark on his forehead at the noise the two squabbling girls were making so near his ears. "Don't those two ever get tired of that?" asked a rotund boy as he opened a bag of potato snacks. His companion, a pineapple-haired boy who had his head on the desk, turned his head slightly to look at his friend. "Women are too troublesome for words, Choji," he replied. "Shikamaru, other me, other me." At the back of the room, a blue-haired girl in a bulky white coat looked at an empty seat with a tinge of sadness in her lavender eyes. "Naruko-chan," she thought sadly. Naruto looked at Hinata in surprise. She looked up at him and realizing how close they were, blushed brightly. However, in a bold show of backbone, she remained holding onto his arm without fainting. Nearby, a boy with brown hair and wearing a large olive-green coat sat silently ignoring his classmates. In the front row, a boy with facial tattoos resembling fangs and wearing a gray coat with a hood was playing with a small white puppy. It was into this chaos that Iruka walked as he entered the room. Walking slowly, he made his way to the teacher's podium. He noted all of this class's usual idiosyncratic oddities with a small sigh. Flipping through 3 hand signs, he used his ninpo, Onigashira no Jutsu, ninja art, demon head jutsu, to make his head seemingly swell up to 3 times its normal size and increase his voice volume by a large amount as well. "So that is a jutsu," Naruto muttered. He had always wondered about that. Thinking on it made him shiver. "Sit down now," he roared, causing the entire class to come to order at last. Wincing slightly from the pain coming from the wound Mizuki gave him, Iruka looked at the class and was about to speak when the door slammed open. "Sorry I'm late," Naruko yelled as she barreled into the classroom. "Ah, Naruko," Iruka said with a smile. "Settling in okay?" "Yeah, but the place is filthy. I've got a lot of work to do when I get back." Naruko grumbled. "Oi, Dobi, why are you here? This is a graduates-only class." The boy with the puppy jeered. Looking back on it, Kiba moaned at his own stupidity and slumped forward, his face sinking into his hands. "Use your eyes for a change, Kiba." Naruko snapped back and pointed at the Hite 8 on her forehead. "Ji-chan will explain everything when he gets here." "Alright Naruko, take your seat," Iruka told her. She grinned at him and walked over to her usual seat. Iruka then launched into a speech about how proud he was of them and the expectations that now befell them as ninja. Naruko sighed and crossed her legs, bored by this. Once Iruka-sensei finished his speech, the third Hokage entered and looked at them sternly. "I'm certain that some of you are wondering why Toji Mizuki is not here," he said gravely. "I'm afraid Mizuki is under arrest for the attempted theft of the Forbidden Scroll of Seals, assault on a fellow Konoha shinobi and breaking an S-rank law." "Wait," Sakura spoke up, "what law?" Yuki looked over to her. Shortly after Naruto was born, the third passed a law that prevented those who already know about Naruto's Jinchuriki status from telling those who didn't know, under the pain of death. This was to let Naruto hopefully have a normal childhood and hopefully let him make friends. You can see how that turned out. And to answer the question you are probably thinking up, a Jinchuriki means power of human sacrifice, and is the title given to those that have one of the 9 Biju sealed inside of them. A flurry of whispers erupt from the new genin, barring the Uchiha and the Aburame. Sarutobi waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. As a result of the confrontation, Uzumaki Naruko was given a special dispensation to be given the rank of genin. I ask that you do not pressure her for details as she is still somewhat exhausted from the confrontation. Ji-chan, Naruko yelps in protest. "It's true, Naruko," Sarutobi told her firmly. "In fact, once you've met with your Jonin-sensei, I want you to go straight home, alright?" "Hi, Ji-chan," Naruko said, giving in to her grandfather figure's demand. "Good," Sarutobi nodded firmly. Turning his attention back to the rest of the genin, the Hokage unfurled a scroll and began reading out the teams. Naruko ignored teams 1 through 6 because they were all civilian-born genin, including that bitch Amy, who had made Naruko's life miserable when she was younger. Team 7 shall be comprised of Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura and Inuzuka Kiba, with Hitaki Kakashi as the Jonin-sensei. Sarutobi announced. The younger members of the Rookie 12, namely the members of Teams 7, 8, and 10 that actually care. Blinked in surprise, with Choji being the one to break the silence. Well, that's new. Shanaru, eat that Ino pig. True love conquers all. Sakura yelled in victory. Well, at least that isn't new. Ino ribbed. Why am I with the broody emo and the pink banshee? Yelled Kiba. Sasuke grunted dismissively. Naruto snarked as he looked at Sasuke. Once again, such riveting conversations you must have, Sasuke. All he got was a glare in response. Team 8 shall be comprised of Yamanaka Ino, Uzumaki Naruto and Hyuga Hinata, with Yuhi Kurenai as the Jonin sensei. The Hokage continued, ignoring the two loud outbursts. Well, I suppose it could be worse. Ino muttered. Thunk. Hinata fainted with joy. Nice. Naruto grinned. Everyone was confused with that. And all Kunoichi team? Team 9 is still in circulation from last year. Team 10 shall be comprised of Aburame Shino, Akamichi Choji and Narashikamaru, with Sarutobi Asuma as the Jonin sensei. Sarutobi finished and tucked the scroll away in his robe. And an all-shinobi team? Yuki spoke up. Don't worry, it explains in the story. Troublesome, muttered Shikamaru. Shino merely remained silent. Much at least Shika's with me, Choji said as he feasted on his snacks. After lunch, your Jonin sensei will pick you up. Except Team 7's sensei, he will be 3 hours late. Sarutobi told them. Why? Asked Sakura, curiously. Because he feels like it, was the blunt response, causing Team 7 to sweat drop. As did everyone listening. Sarutobi coughed slightly. Anyway, we will now break for lunch. Make sure not to be late for your meeting with your Jonin sensei. With that, the Hokage disappeared in a puff of smoke. As the majority of the students made their way out of the classroom, Hinata finally woke up. Hey Anyo, what happened? She asked Ino, who had walked over to her. You found out Naruko-chan was on your team and passed out. Ino replied as she helped her new teammate to her feet. Ino-chan, Hinata-chan, Naruko called from the door. Let's go to Ichiraku's for lunch. My treat. Coming, Ino called. Running to catch up with Naruko, Ino and Hinata missed the blonde-haired man glaring at them from outside the window. And that's the end of that chapter. Choji spoke up. But who was that guy looking into the window at the end? Naruto turned the page and began to read again. Chapter 3. Genin test invaded. That caused most of the genin to become rather nervous. They didn't like the sound of being attacked during their genin test. Well, unless it was their sensei, but that was kinda the point of the thing to begin with. Streets of Konoha. Yamanaka Haruo glared at the demon bitch as she led his clan's heiress as well as the Hyuga heiress down the street. How had she survived the blast that had leveled her building? Was she immortal or something? Kiba was confused. What? Did they just set it on a timer or something? How did they not know that she wasn't in the building when it blew up? Yuki just snorted. Some people, no matter the rank, just seemed to lack common sense altogether. He was careful to keep out of sight and far enough back that the Hyuga girl could not see him even if she activated her Kekkei Genkei as he leapt across the roofs as he followed his quarry. Yuki muttered to himself, as if he even knew her range. This got a couple people's attentions, so he explained himself. While it's never really said, most world has Hinata's Byakugan as not being the most precise up close, but instead has one of the largest ranges out of her clan, and probably on record. He turned to blushing heiress. She was still not used to so much praise after all. From what I've seen out there, she would do exceedingly well with a bow and arrow. Although the trick would be to figure out a way for her to make chakra arrows. That got the girl's attention. Yuki could see that she was giving it some thought. Over with the clan heads, Hiyashi had the most interesting expression when he was told the same, like he was internally ramming his head into the desk while trying not to look like it on the outside. He had been 13 when the Kyuubi had attacked. He had been off duty and spending time with his mother, Hanako, when the immense beast had broken through the outer wall and started laying waste to the village. His mother had used the family jutsu, Shintenshin no Jutsu, mind-body switch jutsu, on the beast and had her mind shredded into nothing by the beast. Her body had not lasted a day after the death of her mind. When Haruo had heard that the fox was sealed in a baby, he knew that the child's mind had been lost to the fox's own powerful mind. After all, seal or no seal, if a Yamanaka, who specialized in mental assaults and defense, could not withstand the demon, What chance could a mere child have? That got everyone's attention as they turned to Yuki for an explanation. He doesn't understand seals. If he did, he'd know that when something is sealed, it is kept separate. That includes mind, body and soul. There's a kid over in Suna that has the one-tailed Biju sealed inside of him with absolutely nothing separating their minds, and his is still readily intact. Unless Naruto tries to delve into the Kyuubi's mind directly, there's no chance that the same would happen to him. Therefore, he had prepared to slay the demon, as he felt the Yondaime had intended to happen and in the name of vengeance for his mother. Considering the Yondaime's last wishes were for Naruto to be treated as a hero? Yeah, stupid. A number of attempts were made to kill the demon by Haruo using his Shintenshin no Jutsu on clanless shinobi in the weeks following the day of the Kyuubi. All of them were ones who had lost loved ones in the attack and were mad with grief and rage at the Kyuubi. Because of that fact, they were not scanned by his own clan when the Anbu caught them. When the third Hokage placed the demon in the orphanage, he was always under the constant guard of Anbu. Haruo had realized that now was not the time and had bided his time gathering the tools for the plan he had laid out. When the orphanage had thrown the demon out for the last time, the third had arranged an apartment for it, which had prompted everyone else in the building, including the owner, to abandon it like rats from a sinking ship. Exactly as Haruo had anticipated. Naruto scowled and muttered to himself, "Jerk." A sentiment that seemed to be shared by most of the others. He had gathered a group of like-minded individuals and enacted his plan. In ones and twos, they had infiltrated the building and placed exploding tags in key areas of the structure so that, when detonated, the demon would die, either from being crushed to death or from the initial blasts. It had not been quick or easy to do. A friend of his was a Hyuga who was an amateur seal master. Neji's seemingly permanent scowl deepened. He didn't like the idea that a Hyuga would be stupid enough to get involved. He had made a fair number of the tags. Unfortunately, only one tag in 5 actually worked, so they had to use far more than was actually needed, just to be on the safe side. In addition, Anbu watched the dilapidated building where the demon lived like hawks, so they couldn't be seen near the building too often. It had taken 7 years between clan obligations, missions, Chunin exams and Jonin exams to reach the point that the building could be destroyed and kill the demon. He had detonated the tags the day after the Genin exam, thinking that the demon would still be in its home, moping after being failed again. He had then gone out for a drink to celebrate, only to see the damn demon bitch walking beside the third Hokage towards the clan residential district. Not only that, but she wore a Hite-8. He couldn't understand it. How had the conniving demon escaped the trap he had worked so hard on for 7 years? How had she actually managed to graduate? He was utterly confused, not to mention angry. Fine then. If he couldn't kill her subtly, he'd just gut her in person. He had been a Jonin for over 2 years and could easily handle Kurenai, who had only been promoted a couple of months ago. The two heiresses were not even a speed bump to Haruo's mind. The aforementioned speed bumps frowned and clenched their fists in anger. That Hinata was getting that angry was just as shocking to those that noticed as it was that Ino wasn't verbally lashing out. Haruo was so focused on his plan that he failed to notice a masked figure following behind him. Yuki could tell that most everybody there was nervous, none more so than Ino, Naruto, and Hinata, the ones involved. With Team 8, Naruko was smiling happily, as she walked into Ichiraku's with her team. She was surprised that she was lucky enough to get on a team with 2 of her friends. She couldn't think how she could have coped with either Kiba or Amy on her team, and don't even get her started on Sasuke the emo prince. Kiba frowned and crossed his arms in thought. Why doesn't Naruko want to be in my team? I mean, with Naruto we weren't the best of friends, but we still hung out on occasion. Osan, Ayame Ne-chan. She called to the owners as she took a seat at the counter. Ichiraku Tuchi turned around, his usual large smile growing slightly larger at the sight of his best customer. Naruko-chan, where have you been the last 2 days? Ayame was growing frantic when she heard your apartment building was blown up. He asked her with concern in his voice. The rookies looked at Naruto for an explanation. He just sat there with a sheepish expression on his face, rubbing the back of his neck. They've been like a sister and uncle to me ever since I first got there. Naruko scratched the back of her head in embarrassment. Sorry, Osan. I was with Sandame Ji-chan when my apartment was blown up, Then I had to crash for the night. This morning I was busy cleaning up my new place. Ah, well that's good. Tucci smiled at Naruto fondly. He was interrupted by a brown blur that leapt over the counter and crashed into Naruto. Ino and Hinata gaped as a brown-haired older girl hugged Naruto in a death grip. Naruto, where have you been? Baka imouto, idiot little sister. The brown-haired girl cried out. For once, Naruto wasn't liking being the center of attention. Ayame, you'd better let Naruto go before she suffocates. Tucci said, amusement coloring his voice. Ayame eeped as she let go of Naruto, who had been turning blue in Ayame's embrace. G. Gomen, Naruko-chan. Ayame said after her surrogate sister had recovered from her death by glomp experience. It's okay Ayame-ne-chan. I should have let you know I was alright. Naruko replied with a grin. Tucci caught sight of her Hite-8. Oh, Naruko-chan, you graduated. Congratulations, he boomed. Yep, Naruko said, pride in her voice. And these two must be your team? Tucci deduced. This is Yamanaka Ino-chan and Hyuga Hinata-chan. Naruko introduced her friends to Tucci. Hi, Ino said with a smile. Anyo, hello, Ichiraku-san. Hinata said, with a small bow. Just call me Tucci, Oju-chan. The chef said kindly, tell you what, to celebrate your graduation, the first bowl is on the house. You could tell that Choji was jealous that there was free food, and he could partake in any of it. Thanks Osan. Naruko beamed at him, I'll have a pork ramen. A small veggie ramen, Ino said. A chicken ramen, please. Hinata said politely. The three girls chatted about their classmates who were in teams 1 through 6 while they ate. Both Ino and Hinata were just as glad as Naruko was that Amy was not on their team. Amy had been the class queen bitch and only her cronies liked her. After they finished, they made their way back to the academy. As they walked, Naruko looked at Ino with a small frown on her face. Ino-chan, you need to eat more. She said finally. I'm on a diet Naruko. Ino replied. We're kunoichi. We don't need to diet. Naruko argued. We have an active life and exercise a lot when we train. All your diet is doing to you is stopping you from getting the energy you need. Yuki nodded as the group looked at him for confirmation. Not only that, but it would stunt your growth. In more ways than one. A teasing grin spread onto his face as he looked at the girls of the group. It's the reason why Hinata's the only one that looks like she hit puberty and why Tenten usually wears chest bindings while the rest of the girls in your class made ironing boards jealous with your flatness. Ino and Sakura pales heavily and vowed to end their diets as soon as they could. However, Yuki spoke up again. I'm actually surprised Sakura was on a diet at all. That got the Pinkette's attention. Knowing how studious you are, I'm surprised you never read up on ninja nutritionary needs. Once you unlock chakra, diets become obsolete and it's recommended that a ninja eat higher amounts of protein and carbohydrates. Otherwise you not only stunt your physical growth, but the growth of your chakra reserves. It's the same reason why Naruto's all-ramen diet left him so short. Only in his case, he needs a bit more meat and vitamins and stuff. He turned to Naruto. Don't worry, after this is over I'll give you some recipes to help. Especially a certain trick when it comes to vegetable and fruit juices. Naruko, I am sticking to my diet. Ino replied, a tick mark appearing on her head. Sasuke-kun won't like me if I'm fat. Still don't see what you see in that Teme. Naruko said, he has all the personality of a dead fish and I've had better conversations with Akamaru. Baka, don't insult Sasuke-kun. Ino yelled at her, what do you have against him anyway? An Uchiha tried to kill me when I was 7. Naruko snapped back angrily, the only Uchihas who didn't hurt me were Itachi-ni, Sasuke's mum and Shisui-san. That got everyone's attention, especially Sasuke's. Wide-eyed, Ino stared at Naruko in horror. Why though? Did you prank them or something? Can't tell you that Ino-chan. Naruko said softly. Just trust me. Sasuke Teme is not worth it if he's anything like what the majority of his clan were like. Sasuke looked like he was starting to get angry. What do you mean by that? Yuki was again the one to answer. Sasuke, first up, you have to realize that most of your clan were pompous and arrogant and thought they were the best on the battlefield with a freshly awoken Sharingan, which usually led to them getting killed off really quickly. Those that didn't die usually never trained to get better and were satisfied with stealing jutsu without any regard for morals or laws, even going so far as to steal from other shinobi or clans in Konoha. Which is the main reason they were pushed to the edge of the village, on top of a rumor that an Uchiha was the reason for the Kyuubi attack. A rumor that is at least partially true, as it was a rogue Uchiha claiming to be Madara that caused it, and that didn't die down due to the proof of Madara controlling the Kyuubi at the Valley of the End against the first Hokage. Yuki took a breath as he let Sasuke and the others absorb the information. And the only ones that weren't were Itachi, Shisui and your mother Makoto. Sasuke sank back into his seat as he went over everything that he just heard. The silence stretched on for a few minutes before Yuki went back to the story. Ino looked like she wanted to ask something else, but they had reached the academy and so she evidently decided to wait until later to grill Naruto. Making their way to their classroom for what would presumably be the last time, Team 8 sat together and waited for their Jonin-sensei. "Oh yeah, guess what you two?" Naruto said excitedly. "Ji-chan told me about my mother yesterday." "I am glad for you, Naruto-chan," Hinata said with a happy smile. All of Naruto's friends knew how much the blonde prankster yearned to know about her family. "So, who was she?" Ino asked. Naruto smiled softly. "Her name was Uzumaki Kushina, an S-rank Jonin kunoichi," she said quietly. Ji-chan said she could give Yondaime-sama a hard time in a spar if he didn't use his Hireishin no jutsu. Yuki brought up some pictures of Kushina. The first was a close-up of her when she was at the academy, to which many commented that she looked a lot like Naruto, especially the way her face was. The second was a full shot right after she graduated, showing off her ninja attire at the time. The third showed her in her Junin outfit, and finally a picture of Kushina when she was pregnant with Naruto. The last one brought a tear to Naruto's eyes as he looked at it, burning every piece of the picture into his memory. The girls looked like they found themselves another role model, while Kiba was surprised that Naruto had such a hot mom. Wow! Hinata breathed in awe. The Yondaime Hokage was practically worshipped by the entire village, both for his actions during the Third Great Shinobi War, where he wiped out fully half of Iwagakure's shinobi forces, and for sacrificing his life to slay the Kyuubi 12 years ago. For Naruto's mother to have been able to give him a hard fight in a spar was incredible. Ino was equally stunned. "I'll say, what happened to her?" Naruto slumped a bit. "She died an hour after giving birth to me. Her body was discovered next to Yondaime-sama's. The file I read didn't say how she died or why she was on the battlefield almost immediately after giving birth to me." Everyone tore themselves away from the picture to look back at Yuki. He gave a sigh and answered, "She was the second Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi, and in most cases the seal holding a biju weakens during the hormonal mess of pregnancy and is at its weakest during childbirth. However, the seal Naruto has is the same as yours, and for her, it isn't affected by that. So she doesn't have anything to worry about if she became pregnant." Ino's eyes watered and she felt like kicking herself for asking such an insensitive question. She had obviously died before Naruto could remember her, so she should have kept her mouth shut. "Sorry, Naruto-chan, I shouldn't have asked that," Ino said softly. Naruto shook her head slightly. "It's okay, Ino-chan," she assured her friend with a small smile. Just then, the door opened and a pair of shinobi entered the room. One was a man who looked a lot like a much younger version of the third Hokage, wearing the standard Jonin outfit, with a sash around his waist with the character, Huo, fire, emblazoned on it. Naruto supposed that this was Sarutobi Asuma. Yuki chuckled, getting everyone's attention. "I remember one world, Naruto. When you first met him, the first thing out of your mouth was, 'Are you Gigi's pain in the ass?' It got him sputtering in response and is a personal favorite moment of mine." Naruto chuckled. He'd have to remember that one. The other person to walk in was a kunoichi. She had black hair, an unsettling pair of red eyes, and wore an outfit that looked like it was made of bandages with thorny vines painted on them. Presumably then, this was Yuhi Kurenai. Naruto noted with disgust that Kiba was leering at her lecherously. Kiba blanched and looked at Yuki. The expression was hard to place. "Yes, Kiba, it looks like this is going to be one of those alternates. Team 10, this way," the Sandame look-alike said before walking out. Shino, Shikamaru and Choji made their way out the door. The Jonin kunoichi looked around and said, "Team 8? With me," and walked out as well. The three genin hurried after her and caught up to her at the academy's main entrance. She looked each of them in the eyes, smiling when she saw Hinata, and said, "Meet me at Ashigya's dango shop." Before she vanished in a swirl of leaves. Naruto frowned. That was odd. Why would she? Suddenly, the gauntlet she had hidden on her arm warmed up and was getting hot. Naruto pulled her sleeve and looked at it. The eyes of the snarling ape face were glowing red, reminding Naruto of the Jonin sensei that had just been here. Looking up at her teammates, Naruto frowned when she saw that their pupils were contracted and they seemed to be staring off into the distance. Her own eyes widened when she realized what was happening. Genjutsu. Forming the tiger seal, Naruto attempted to dispel the illusion. Kai, release, she said as she tried to halt the flow of chakra within herself and then overpower the chakra of the person who had cast the genjutsu with her own chakra. Much to her own surprise, it worked, revealing her sensei standing in front of her with wide eyes. You broke free of my genjutsu. Sanrin Yoko no Jutsu, illusion. Scattered leaf journey jutsu. And my genjutsu. Tamai Manto no Jutsu, illusion. Invisibility cloak jutsu. Before either of your teammates even discovered they were even in a genjutsu. She exclaimed in shock, how? I was told that you had no skill in genjutsu or genjutsu detection. Everyone looked at Yuki for an answer. I really should get used to something like this happening, it will be explained later. Ehehehe. Naruto chuckled nervously. Would you accept, I don't know either, as an answer? I'm afraid not. Kurenai replied firmly. Naruto sighed and revealed Eno Kagote. I think it has something to do with this gauntlet that Sandame Ji-chan gave me yesterday. I think my chakra control goes up a bit when I wear it. A bit, Kurenai parroted. Try, by a whole lot, Naruto. The Academy's reports say you couldn't even recognize that you were in a genjutsu, let alone break two almost simultaneously. Naruto flushed at this and opened her mouth to reply. But then Hinata ran through a shorthand sign sequence and said, Byakugan. White eye, prompting veins on the sides of her eyes to bulge out. After looking around for a moment, Hinata cancelled the genjutsu on herself. En Naruko-chan? Ino-chan? Hinata asked looking between her friends. Naruto swiftly concealed her gauntlet. She didn't want any more questions asked of her than Kurenai already had. Ino-chan's still under the genjutsu. Naruto told her. I'd get her out of it but… I kinda don't know how to get another person out of a genjutsu other than with pain, and if I use that method, Ino-chan will thump me one. Ino spoke up, you bet your ass I would. Leveling a glare at Naruto. The boy in question was attempting to use Hinata as cover to hide, much to the girl's embarrassment. Hinata giggled as she formed the tiger seal again, then reached to touch Ino's head and said, Kai. Ino immediately blinked and looked around as Hinata removed her hand from her friend. Huh, what the Mind Walker said, disoriented by her sudden return to reality. It looks like our sensei was testing us in advance of the real genin test. Naruto said dryly. Kurenai's eyes narrowed at Naruto's words. Everyone was a bit curious now, they had only just found out the day before taking it themselves, which had been yesterday for the younger genin. How did you know about the test? No genin is supposed to know about the real test until told by their sensei. She asked sharply. Naruto shrugged nonchalantly. Ji-chan mentioned it yesterday. He didn't say what it was, just that it's going to happen tomorrow. Kurenai stared at Naruto for a moment before sighing and beckoning the girls to follow her. They walked to the dango restaurant that Kurenai had mentioned previously and sat at a table. Kurenai ordered a pot of tea along with a plate of dango. Alright, let's begin by introducing ourselves. The red-eyed Jonin said briskly as she poured herself some tea. Introduce ourselves? Ino said blankly, why? I've been friends and classmates with Naruto and Hinata for years. But you don't know me and I don't know you. Kurenai replied, I'll go first. I'm Yuhi Kurenai. I like dango and my friends. I dislike perverts and people who lower the standards of kunoichi. My dream for the future is to train you all into strong kunoichi. Your turn, Ponytail. Ino's eyebrow twitched at the nickname. As did her counterpart. But she forced down her lingering irritation at the Jonin who had put her under a genjutsu for a preliminary test. Although Ino inwardly acknowledged that a great deal of her irritation was due to her own inability to detect and break the damn genjutsu. Fine. I'm Yamanaka Ino. I like flowers, red bean soup and Sasuke-kun. I dislike loud and obnoxious people and, on occasion, forehead girl. My dream is to be a strong kunoichi and master my clan jutsu. Both Naruto and Hinata turned to Ino, and spoke at the same time. You like red bean soup too? This caused all three of them to look at each other in mild shock, before a small smile graced their features. Slight fangirl issues, but nothing too severe. Kurenai thought as she motioned to Hinata that it was her turn. I'm Hyuga Hinata. She sneaked a blushing glance at Naruto, cinnamon buns, and my friends. Flower pressing A in origami. I dislike people who put the B blame where it isn't due in the Hyuga Soke no Juinjutsu. Hyuga main family's cursed seal jutsu. My dream is to reunite the Hyuga clan as AF family and become a strong kunoichi. Looks like she still admires Naruto. And she still hates the caged bird, seal. Kurenai smiled at the girl she considered her surrogate daughter, before turning to Naruto. And finally, Naruto. Your turn. Yosh. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I like my friends, training, ramen and a soon-to-be added addition is researching my family history. I dislike Sasuke Teme, people who can't see the scroll for the kunai it seals, the 3-minute wait to cook cup ramen and perverts. My dream is to become the Hokage who will surpass all those who came before me. Datbeo. Well, that was a whole lot more detailed than I expected. Family history? I thought she was an orphan. She's obviously taking a stand against the village idiots who think she's the fox. Good for her. Kurenai thought approvingly. Very good. Now, as Naruto said earlier, you have yet to actually pass the real test for becoming genin. Kurenai said seriously. What was the academy graduation test for then? Asked Ino irately. A filter. To keep those who lack the most basic skills out of the shinobi forces. Kurenai replied, by passing those exams, you have proven that you are ready to be truly tested. I should warn you, the failure rate of the true genin exam is 66% or, more simply, 2/3 of those who will take the test tomorrow will fail it. Naruto just grumbled out loud at how that explanation was much better and easier to understand than the one Kakashi-sensei gave us. 2/3? Ino almost shouted in shock. Yes, all those who fail are sent back to repeat the last year of the academy. Kurenai said, absolutely serious. The test is tomorrow. Meet at training field 8 at 8 o'clock sharp. Dismissed. The three genin got up and bowed to Kurenai before walking off, leaving Kurenai frowning in consternation at the retreating back of one Uzumaki Naruto. I had better ask Hokage-sama about that gauntlet. I've never heard of a device that improves chakra control like that before. Kurenai thought, unaware of the eavesdropping man who got up and wandered after her students. Hokage's office, 5 hours later. Kurenai's eyebrow was twitching rapidly in irritation. She, along with the Hokage and the rest of the Jonin-sensei, were waiting for the last member of their group, the infamous Hitaki Kakashi, to arrive. He was infamous for arriving 3 hours late to anything but a rank plus missions or a meeting with the Hokage. In the latter's case he was instead only 1 hour late. After that statement, it looked like the twitching eyebrows of irritation were rampant among the genin. Kurenai hated the man, who almost had to be a pervert, reading those smutty books in public as he did. She willingly admitted that his accomplishments during the Third Great Shinobi War and as an Anbu captain were impressive and noteworthy. But the man himself was an awful avatar of deviant hobbies and bad habits. She only hoped that none of his genin picked any of them. A puff of smoke signaled the arrival finally of the errant Jonin, who greeted them all with a jaunty, yo. Kakashi. The Hokage sighed, I don't really mind if you are an hour late to a meeting when it's just me, but from now on, you will be on time of any meetings involving the Jonin-sensei. Understood? Hi, Hokage-sama. The silver-haired man replied in a monotone voice. The Hokage looked at the former Anbu captain for a moment, before sighing and spoke to the rest of the Jonin-sensei. Now that we are all finally here, I would like your impressions of your teams and how you think they might fare tomorrow. The Jonin-senseis for teams 1 through 6 were pessimistic about their team's chances. One even questioned why they were even bothering to test all civilian-raised teams in the first place. Finally, it was Kakashi's turn. Sakura is a fangirl, which is troublesome. She focuses almost exclusively on Sasuke to the point of obsession. Kiba is arrogant, plain and simple. In addition, he is dismissive of kunoichi in general. Sasuke is also arrogant and gives his teammates the cold shoulder, seeing them as beneath him. I highly doubt they will pass my test. The one-eyed Jonin said lazily as he turned a page in his book. Kiba paled at hearing that. It might have been the truth in the world the book took place in, but in the here that he lived in his mother and sister would beat the ever-living tar out of him if he even dared to think that. Sasuke heard what Kakashi thought of him, and was busy going over how he's acted, his attitude up until then, and how much of that would actually hinder any of his goals, and he wasn't liking the results. I see, Asuma? Sarutobi said, turning to look at his son. Choji is unmotivated by anything short of anyone calling him fat, and he eats too much, even for an Akamichi. Choji looked like he swallowed a lemon when he heard that. Shikamaru, I suspect, is lazy but highly intelligent like the rest of his clan. Shino is quiet, to the point of rudeness. Shino silently marked down that comment in his mind and made a note to work on that in the future. I suspect that his average marks at the academy, like Shikamaru's, are by design rather than lack of effort. I think they'll pass, Asuma said with a smile that made Kurenai blush slightly. Good, Kurenai? My team is interesting. Ino is a fangirl, similar to Sakura, but not nearly as severe, I would say. There might be a point of contention with Naruto, but I think their friendship is too strong for it to be a factor. Hinata is shy and lacks confidence, but with Naruto's presence, I hope that will fade. Naruto is hard to describe. She is loud, uninhibited, and I believe she lacks discipline. However, from what I gathered, she is planning to take a stand against those who believe her to be the fox, and she is very loyal to her friends. I believe my team will pass as well, Kurenai said with a small smile. Some of the genin smiled softly at their assessments. Very well. Kakashi, Kurenai and Asuma, you three stay. Everyone else is dismissed to prepare for tomorrow, Sarutobi ordered. Once the rest of the Jonin had left, the old Hokage's face hardened into granite as he spoke. Kurenai, I have received word that one of your students is under threat of assassination. What? Kurenai's eyes flashed with anger. Who? Naruto. By the person we suspect to have been responsible for blowing up her former apartment building. Sarutobi replied gravely. Why haven't you arrested the culprit yet? She asked. Because all we have are suspicions. A lot of damning circumstantial evidence, suspicious behavior and secretive goings-on, but nothing that solidly links our suspect to anything we think he did. Sarutobi replied. Kurenai frowned. Technically, as sitting Hokage, Sarutobi was the military dictator of Konoha and able to do pretty much as he pleased. On paper. In practice, most of the civilian council dug its heels in stubbornly whenever the Sandaime infringed on non-shinobi matters. Most frowned at that. Yuki could see the strong dislike of the civilian council start to build just by hearing all of this. Whereas the shinobi council, who held far more power, had to be handled just right, as several of them were ancient and powerful clans dating back to before Konoha's founding, such as the Hyuga, whereas others were vital to the various areas of the Konoha shinobi forces, such as the Kurama clan, Genjutsu, the Inuzuka, tracking in taijutsu, the Aburame, tracking, the Hyuga, tracking in taijutsu, the Nara, strategy, the Akamichi, frontline fighters, the Yamanaka, interrogation, and, before their destruction, the Uchiha, ninjutsu. All of these factors, in addition to the fact that Sarutobi was an old man who should still be retired, meant he could not act without cause. Who's the suspect? She asked. Yamanaka Haruo. He was shadowing your team right up until you placed them in that genjutsu, then went ahead to the dango restaurant you mentioned. It is the ANBU's opinion he plans to ambush your team during their genin test tomorrow. Sarutobi replied. He was shadowing them and I never knew it? Kurenai was horrified. Was she useless as a jonin? Haruo is a skilled jonin who has specialized in infiltration and assassination, Kurenai. There is no need to feel inadequate as a jonin because a specialist managed to fool you. Sarutobi added, as if reading her mind. Right. Kurenai shook her head to clear it. So, what's the plan to catch him? Sarutobi smiled predatorily, making the three jonin shiver and make mental notes to never, ever get on the bad side of Sarutobi Hiruzen. That smile promised pain. Naruto perked up when he saw that smile. It was just like his own prankster smile when he was planning to get payback against some of the more, in his mind, evil villagers. With Naruko. Former Toji clan home, clan residential district. Naruko looked over the work her clones had done and smiled. The place was spotless and most definitely going pain. Not bad for another 5 hours of concentrated effort by 50 clones plus herself. After Kurenai had dismissed them, Team 8 had split up because Ino had one last shift at her family's flower shop to do, while Hinata had to report to her father about who was on her team. Naruko waved off Hinata's apologies and told her that obviously her father was going to want to know who was on his daughter's team, especially since Hinata was his heir. Naruko had spent a couple of hours doing a bit of shopping. She had run low on shuriken and kunai, so she had stocked up. She had also taken the opportunity to buy a brand new outfit. While she loved her orange jumpsuit for its practicality, durability and, most importantly, color, she had decided that as an honest Takami kunoichi, not a student, a more subdued color scheme was in order. Ino-chan won't believe her eyes tomorrow. Naruko thought smugly. Ino's complaints and rants about that accursed orange monstrosity were legendary at the academy. The academy, Naruko remembered Kurenai-sensei's warning about what would happen to those who failed the true genin test. Her face contorted in a scowl. No, she absolutely would not fail tomorrow. She had been lucky that her Ji-chan gave her a special pass to graduate due to her mastery of the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. If she failed and got sent back, she had little doubt that there would be a rule stating that only the Bunshin no Jutsu would be allowed. Even although she could use the damn thing, she did not want to have to wait an entire year to prove she could accomplish what she thought of as the single most useless jutsu she had ever seen. Even her Oryoke no Jutsu was more useful than the basic Bunshin. My family scrolls. Naruko remembered the 2 boxes she had put in her room last night. Maybe I'll find something in there that can help me. Dispelling her clones in a hurry, Naruko made it 2 paces before an enormous influx of memories, 10 hours worth from the first 30 clones and 5 hours worth from the 20 she had made when she arrived back from her first team meeting, giving her the mother of all headaches. Yuki gave Naruto a look and the boy knew that what was happening was just more proof to be safe with the shadow clones. Okay, that hurt. What the hell was it? Naruko muttered aloud once the searing pain disappeared. She could now remember cleaning the entire house from top to bottom and from multiple points of view. The points of view from her clones. No way, she muttered in awe. She could remember everything her clones did? Was that even possible? She hadn't exactly read the part of the effect on the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu other than how to perform it. Deciding that she needed advice and to run a test whilst getting it, Naruko made another shadow clone and ordered it to go ask Iruka-sensei about the full details of what the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu could do. Having temporarily sated her curiosity about her best jutsu, Naruko moved once again to investigate her family's scrolls. Once she reached her room, she frowned as she looked between the red box and the orange box. Well, since my mother had red hair, I can guess that there might be family stuff in the red box. The orange one, I have no clue. I'll go with the red one for now. Decision made, Naruko lifted the lid off of the box and peered inside. The box was full of scrolls. There were about 7 large ones, a couple of medium-sized ones and several smaller ones. Secured atop one was a folded letter with her name on it. Reaching out with a trembling hand, Naruko picked up the letter and turned it around to see who had written it. Uzumaki Kushina was written on the back where a sender's name was usually written. Naruko gasped. A letter from her mother. Quite possibly the only words she would ever read written directly to her from her mother. Swallowing the lump that had suddenly appeared in her throat, Naruko unfolded the letter slowly and began to read it. To my daughter Naruko. As I write this, we have only just been told that you are a girl, so I can finally write down without tripping over gender-specific words. I hope that your father and I are sitting with you and laughing about your mother's paranoia during pregnancy, but this letter is written in the case that something goes wrong during the birth. Therefore, I must assume that either I am dead and your father is alive, or that both of us are dead and you are alone, for which I am sorrier than you can imagine. To start then, my name is Uzumaki Kushina, the last of the main branch of the Uzumaki clan, and I am proud to say that I am your mother. I have blood-red hair and dark blue eyes. When I was younger, people nicknamed me Tomato because my face was quite round back then and my hair was so unusual. They regretted it though when I beat them up. Everyone but Naruto, Yuki, and Hinata deadpanned. They could see where Naruto got his personality from. I became a genin in due course, and I was quite the scrappy tomboy, so much so that my new nickname was the Red Hot-Blooded Habanero. When I became a jonin, my exploits on the battlefield during the Third Great Shinobi War earned me a nickname I do not take much pride in, the Bloody Crimson Death. The Uzumaki are related to the Senju clan and have been allies for years. I was brought to Konoha for a very specific purpose, to become the container, or Jinchuriki, of the powerful Biju known as the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Naruko stopped reading, shocked. Konoha had brought her mother here to use as a damn container. How dare they? Naruko gritted her teeth and kept reading, hoping something here would explain why. The word, Jinchuriki, is an old one, as old as the shinobi world itself. It means literally, the power of human sacrifice. Those that are called this have Biju sealed within them, mostly done as a newborn child. This is because as a newborn, a human has undeveloped chakra coils and so the Biju's immense power cannot shatter and destroy the coils. Instead, the child's coils grow immensely due to the influence of the prisoner sealed within. We Uzumaki however are an exception. You may remember from history, you had better have paid attention, that the wife of the Shodem Hokage was an Uzumaki, my great-aunt Mito in fact. After Senju Hashirama defeated Uchiha Madara at the Valley of the End, Mito Ba-chan used an Uzumaki clan fuinjutsu to seal the Kyuubi, which had been under Madara's control, within her. She survived because our bodies make the perfect hosts for the tailed beasts. After a number of tests, Mito Ba-chan and the Shodem concluded that the full weight of the Kyuubi's chakra was such that none but an Uzumaki could contain it, because of our immensely dense, powerful and unique chakra. Even then, only a select few from the main branch had the necessary chakra to be a host. Mito contained the Kyuubi through the First and Second Great Shinobi Wars unknown to the villagers of Konoha. Sadly, although the Uzumaki are known to be long-lived, Mito Ba-chan eventually felt that her life was to come to an end, so Sandame-sama sent word to the home of the Uzumaki, Uzushiogakure, for someone to contain the Kyuubi before Mito Ba-chan passed away. I was chosen due to my extra dense and powerful chakra, but not told of why I was until some time after I arrived. Naturally, the thought of hosting the Kyuubi terrified me. Mito Ba-chan comforted me and once I was ready, the Kyuubi was sealed inside me. You might be wondering why I am telling you this, Naruko-chan, and I will tell you now. The entire reason I am writing this letter is because for a Jinchuriki, there is one time, and only one time, when the seal keeping the Biju weakens and that is only applicable for female Jinchuriki. Childbirth. During the 9 months of pregnancy, the energy used to maintain the seal is instead directed towards the developing child, gradually weakening the seal until at childbirth. The seal is at its absolute weakest point and the risk of the Biju breaking out actually becomes feasible. We are taking all possible precautions to prevent this of course. The Yondaime is going to be standing by to reform the seal immediately after childbirth, so the Kyuubi stands no chance of escaping. Minato is a superb sealmaster. For a non-Uzumaki, however, as you are reading this, I must tell you now. You are, in all likelihood, the new Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. If the Kyuubi escaped, the only way to stop it is to seal it within a new vessel, you. It could not be resealed within me, because when a tailed beast escapes or is extracted, it usually kills the former host. Uzumaki live for about 2 hours after extraction, to judge from Mito Ba-chan's example. Hearing that horrified those listening, with only Sasuke and Neji being the exception, and were starting to feel bad about how they treated Naruto, or felt that they should have done more. I desperately do not want to have you bear the burden of a Jinchuriki, so I have insisted on every scenario be considered to ensure the fox stays put. If that old fool Sarutobi hasn't told you about the Kyuubi yet, give his family jewels a good kick and say that it was maternal payback from me. Glancing over to his brother's section, Yuki could definitely tell that the third was whimpering at that line. If you are the new Jinchuriki though, something must have happened that we did not consider. It won't be a problem with the fuinjutsu, because of Minato being there. Nor will it be an issue with me bleeding to death during childbirth. Sarutobi Bawako, Sandame-sama's wife, is the best midwife and med-nin in the world aside from Tsunade of the Sannin. If anything, I would say that someone interfered with the process. However, we will be guarded by several teams of Anbu whilst under a Kekai in a secret location, so I am actually at a loss as to how this could have happened. You should be at Chunin when you read this, so I am sorry that you have not known of your family until now. The contents of this box hold the knowledge, history and jutsu of the entire Uzumaki clan. I received it a couple of days after the destruction of Uzu Shiogakure from the personal summon of my father, the Azukage, Eddie Shadow. I had Minato store this box in a secret safe built into the wall of the Hokage's office, just in case. He is a bit of an idiot. He believes that the village would honor any child of mine regardless of whether it had the Kyuubi sealed in it or not. I am less trusting than he is. Now, I will give you the same advice that Mito Ba-chan gave me when she gave me the courage to become the Kyuubi's container. Fill yourself with love. It is the only thing that can counter the Kyuubi's chakra, which floods its host with negative emotions. Find someone, something to love and hold it close to your heart with both hands. Mito Ba-chan had Hashirama and I have your father. It worked for us and it will work for you. That is all I can tell you, my beloved daughter. The history of our clan, right up to the day of its near annihilation, is here for you to study. Our unique ninjutsu, our taijutsu, our kenjutsu, all of it is for you and your descendants. In another box, colored orange, is the Uzumaki's Fuinjutsu library, although I would advise you to work through standard books on Fuinjutsu before you so much as look at those. I also leave you my own sword, which served me faithfully throughout my career as a kunoichi. I called it Benihime, Crimson Princess, although others, mainly shinobi from Iwa, Kumo and Kiri called it the Ryaketsu Shinigami, Bloody Reaper. Whenever it changes hands, its name is wiped clean and the new owner must name it when it next takes a life. My daughter, you will live a hard, painful life and I wish I had been able to save you from it. Just know that your father and I love you with everything we have, even from death. When you make Jonin, you will receive another box like these two from your father. This must be frustrating for you, but I had many enemies who would seek to take revenge on you to get at me, even in death. Your father has even more enemies that would seek to do the same. With all my love, Uzumaki Kushina. Naruto was full-blown tears at this point, as were the girls, especially Hinata, who was using Naruto's shoulder to cry on. Tears fell from Naruto's eyes as she finished reading the letter her mother had left her. Thoughts swirled in her with alarming frequency, none able to surface to be heard in the raging tumult that was her mind at the moment. Her mother had done everything she could to prevent Naruto from becoming a Jinchuriki, but it had failed for a reason that had somehow gotten past all of the preparations and precautions that the Yondaime and the Sandaime had arranged. Her mother had loved her enough to risk dying to give birth to her. Wiping her eyes angrily, Naruto then carefully folded the letter up again and put it carefully on her bedside table. She then examined the box of scrolls and selected two from within it, then closed the box again. She was then hit by an influx of memories from the clone she had sent to Iruka-sensei. Evidently, she could use the Kage Bunshin to speed learn jutsu and improve her chakra control. Nice. Don't worry, mother. I will make you proud. I'll live with everything I have, and prove those idiots in the village wrong. I am Uzumaki Naruto and not the fox. The last Uzumaki promised her deceased mother as she walked towards the training hall with purpose in her steps. Naruto agreed with his other and vowed to do the same. The next day, 7:55 a.m. Training Field 8, Konohagakure outskirts. Where is Naruto? Yelled an irate Yamanaka Ino as she paced back and forth, constantly checking the position of the sun to tell what time it was. Standing a short distance away from the purple-clad kunoichi was Hinata, poking her fingers together nervously. I am sure she's on her way, Ino-chan. Hinata said quietly. Ino swung around with an irate look on her face. She'd better be or I'll kick her ass. Ino said dangerously, no way am I going back to the academy because she damn well slept in. Good thing I arrived just now then, Ino-chan, said a voice from behind the blonde kunoichi, making her and Hinata jump in fright. Naruto. Ino yelled in fury as she whirled around, you scared me, too. Her voice faded as she took in the form of her teammate. Hinata gasped, squeaked out, eep, and turned redder than a tomato when she saw Naruto. Instead of her usual orange jumpsuit, she was wearing a very interesting outfit. A tight black bodysuit that started at her neck and stopped at her thighs, a pale blue vest that did little to conceal her mildly impressive cleavage, a dull blue skirt and a dull red trench coat with a black hood adorned Naruto's body now. Black ninja sandals encased her feet. The right sleeve of the coat was missing and had a pair of black belts attached to the front and back of the coat, and she had a beautiful gauntlet adorning her right forearm. Her hair was in its usual ponytail, with the Hite 8 tied across her forehead and under the ponytail's tie. Half the boys had full-on blushes when the picture came up, while the others were furiously trying to push down their own. Hinata looked like she blushed so much that it was spilling out based on the nosebleed and iridescent glow she had. "En Naruko?" Ino asked, stunned, "Is that really you? In the flesh, dat bayo?" Naruko grinned her foxy smile at her two friends. "Sorry for being late. I didn't get much sleep, for more than one reason." Hinata saw that Naruko's eyes were red and swollen. "Anyo, Naruko-chan, you've been crying, what happened?" Ino's eyes widened as she noticed this as well. "Naruko?" It was almost unheard of for the irrepressible, upbeat and stubborn girl to even show a hint of unhappiness. For Naruko to have cried. Naruko said in a shaky voice, "I found a letter from my mother that she wrote to me, in case she didn't survive the birth." The two other kunoichi didn't hesitate to go up to Naruko and envelop her in a hug. After wiping away the blood, Hinata did the same for Naruto. Hinata had lost her mother when she was young and missed her desperately. Ino hadn't lost any of her close relatives that she had met, but shuddered at the very thought of losing her mother, whom she loved very much. Naruko returned their hugs with gratitude. "Well, ain't this cozy, Nai-chan?" an amused voice said from behind the three genin. The three-way hug broke up and they saw Kurenai-sensei standing next to a woman dressed similar to Naruko, except more so. She had purple hair in a pineapple-like style. Her bodysuit was mesh and her skirt was a dull orange, not to mention shorter than Naruko's. She wore shin guards over her sandals and her trench coat was a dull tan. Indeed, Kurenai agreed with her mysterious companion. "It's good that they are close, isn't it, Anko? They might actually survive." Yuki muttered something about not knowing which one influenced the other. Nothing better than smacking around genin fresh out of the academy. So young, so innocent, such easy prey. The newly named Anko said with a mildly sadistic expression as she licked her lips slowly. Ino was paling. "Anko? As in Mitarashi Anko? The Tokuho? Of Anbu T and I?" She squeaked out. "That's me," Anko said with a grin. "Oh, I recognize you're Inoichi's brat, aren't y'all?" "She is." Kurenai agreed. "That's Hyuga Hinata over there. That stick-up is ass Hiishi's eldest?" Anko questioned as Hinata shrank back behind Naruko under the gaze of the older woman. "She's a mouse." "You sure, Nai-chan?" "Hey, quit picking on my friends. Hubby Ona, snake woman." Naruko growled. Naruto found himself doing the same thing. Anko's face went rigid. "And why do you call me that, Gaki?" she said very softly as she locked eyes with Naruko. Kurenai looked warily between the two kunoichi. The whiskered girl snorted. "Because you reek of snakes. Just like that Anbu who kept breaking into my apartment before some jackass blew it up." Anko raised an eyebrow. "You can smell that?" Yeah, I'm surprised everyone else can't. Seriously, I could track you across a damn jungle," Naruko said with a wrinkled nose. Anko smirked as she slowly drew a kunai and began fingering it. "That's because I signed the snake summon contract, Gaki. Only other shinobi who have signed a contract or very powerful ninja can sense that kind of thing." "Which are you? A summon contract? Never even seen one, so the second one I guess." Naruko smirked back. Ino and Hinata were crouched behind the red-clad kunoichi like she was a shield. "That a fact?" Anko asked. "Well, we'll see about that, Nai-chan?" Yeah," Kurenai said, still trying to recover from the sudden lack of tension in the air. "Ahem. Today, as you know, is the real genin test. Your test is to get Anko-chan here." She waved at the evilly grinning kunoichi next to her, to drop her kunai. The three genin looked blank for a moment. Then, Naruko spoke up warily, "So if she throws it at us, she loses?" "Essentially," replied Kurenai. "And she has no other kunai on her?" Ino further pressed. "Nope," Anko replied cheerfully as she tossed her kunai pouch to Kurenai. "Anyo, Kurenai-sensei? Are you trying to kill us?" Naruko said, her face and voice completely deadpan. Kurenai raised both eyebrows at this. "Why do you say that? Ino-chan called her a tokuho earlier. That means a tokubetsu jonin, which is only one rank under you," Naruko said. Oh, the chance would be a fine thing. Anko muttered, making Kurenai flush red. And I'm fairly certain that new genin like us have only a slightly better chance against a Jonin than a snowball in hell. Ino finished, still pale. Tough kiddies. This is your test, Anko said seriously. Either accept the mission or take off your hite-ates and scram. If you are given a mission that seems like suicide in the shinobi world when lives might be at risk, you do the mission, no questions. Weak resolves get you nowhere. In for a Ryo, Naruko muttered as she glanced to Ino and Hinata. You two in? I'm not ready to bow to some crazy snake lady. Anko's eye twitched at the nickname Naruko gave her. Me neither. Ino replied, taking heart from Naruko's confidence. Let's do our best. Hinata nodded. Naruko turned back to the watching Jonin. There you have it. Can we have time to make a plan first? Naruko asked bluntly. Anko and Kurenai just looked at them for a second before bursting out in laughter, prompting a tick mark to appear on both Naruko and Ino's heads. Oi, what the hell is so funny? Naruko asked. You three, pass? Kurenai gasped out, holding her aching sides with both hands. As one, the three genin said, a sentiment echoed by those in the room not reading. Anko grabbed her kunai pouch from where Kurenai had dropped it and strapped it back on. She then turned to explain the test to the genin. Wisey, there are a few important things you need in a team. Individual abilities, teamwork, planning, all of those are important. But one of the most important is trust in your teammates. Kurenai took over at this point. If you don't trust your teammates, you can't make good use of your individual skills. You can't have any reasonable level of teamwork, and any planning is useless without trust on the side of the planner and those who will carry out the plan. She pointed at Ino. I brought along Anko-chan here because I knew that Ino's father had told her stories about Anko at home, so Ino's resolve was shaken. She knew that Anko was way above her weight class. That was, Shino started out, tricky, Shikamaru finished, and not something most people think about when planning a test like this. Shikamaru folded his fingers together as he leaned forward into them, and by the reactions, I'm guessing that it was different than the one she administered to the team in our world. He got nods in return. The Nara began thinking hard about, well, something. As Yuki went back to the story. Kurenai then gestured at Hinata. Anko is also very good at intimidating people from just looking at them. Hinata has very little self-confidence, so she was reduced to cowering behind Naruko, someone she trusts. Anko jumped in again, so the last one left was Naruko here. She took in Ino's information about my rank, my presence and stares, and came up with the fact that they could not win, despite the handicaps we were throwing. A sensible conclusion, to be fair, as I could whip all three of you at once without even trying. Therefore, I then tried to push you all into a decision by introducing a sudden death situation. Do or do not. Try or fail. The key was the fact Naruko instinctively trusted herself, as well as you two. She trusted that you would fight alongside her, without a second of doubt on her part. In turn, the trust she showed in you returned your confidence, Ino, Hinata. And your belief in and trust in Naruko helped you two do that. Kurenai finished with a smile. The three genin smiled, happy for their others. However, Naruto's smile didn't last. He remembered the chapter's title. The genin kunoichi looked at each other with growing smiles. They had passed. Ino suddenly glomped both Hinata and Naruko with a laugh. We did it, she squealed in delight. Damn straight, said Naruko. Hi. Hinata stammered out, blushing furiously at being drawn so close to Naruko's face by Ino's hug. Kurenai let the kids celebrate for a moment, before calling them to order. Alright you three, settle down, she called with a small laugh. Once the three kunoichi had calmed down, Kurenai continued. Now that you three are officially genin, we need to see where you skill-wise, so you'll be sparring with Anko no weapons, Anko. And she'll tell you where you need to improve. Naruko frowned slightly. Kurenai-sensei, I already know that my taijutsu is pathetic. Can I skip this bit? Kurenai was surprised. From everything she had heard about her, she had expected Naruko to jump at the chance to show off in front of others. Oh? And who told you that, Naruko? Sandaime Ji-chan. He said that Mizuki Teme sabotaged my taijutsu, so it was full of openings and was unbalanced. Naruko replied, a slightly dark look coming over her face. Ino was thunderstruck. So, when all of us thought that you were getting personal instruction, he was making your taijutsu worthless? What a scumbag. Hinata was glaring at nothing in particular, which was intimidating on the face of a Hyuga. Anko scowled and made a note to herself to really go to town on the silver-haired bastard when she got back to T&I. Kurenai merely frowned slightly. Well, that is certainly troublesome. You'll have to learn the academy style from scratch. Actually, I'm planning on learning my clan's taijutsu style, Kurenai-sensei. Naruko said happily. I never felt comfortable with the academy style, even before Mizuki Teme started messing with it. A clan style? You have a clan? Kurenai asked, surprised. Had, actually. Naruko corrected sadly. The Uzumaki were all but wiped out at the start of the Third Great Ninja War. My mother was one of the few to escape the massacre by being in Konoha when it happened. She left me the clan archives and library, so the Uzumaki are still here, even if it's only me. Gaki, the only Uzumaki I remember being in Konoha after the war was Kushina-sama. You saying you're her kid? Asked Anko intently. Yep, I am proud to be the daughter of the red-hot habanero. Naruko declared. Kami. Kurenai breathed in awe. Before she could say or do anything else, she felt her body struck with a wave of chakra. Here it comes, Naruto muttered, getting everyone's attention and causing those that cared to become worried. What the? She got out. All of the others felt it as well. Abruptly, Anko drew back her hand shakily and punched Naruko in the face, sending her to the ground. What the hell, Anko? Kurenai yelled. It's not me. Anko yelled back, as she moved for another blow. My body's doing it all on its own. Ino's eyes widened as she kicked Hinata in the gut. I know what this is. Daddy told me about it. It is a Yamanaka clan jutsu, the Shinrenshin no Jutsu. Mind destruction jutsu. Ino's eyes widened as her worry increased. She knew about that jutsu. Naruko stood up shakily and did a roundhouse kick to Kurenai. Can you counter it? I haven't even learned it yet. Ino retorted just before Hinata backhanded her. Well, how does it work? Anko grunted as she tried to stop herself from drawing a kunai and failed. I think it works by sending chakra into the opponent's nervous system. Ino said, desperately trying to remember the conversation she had had with her father about the advanced clan jutsu. Is that all? Naruko asked as she shakily forced her arms to obey her, rather than the one acting as the puppet master, and formed the ram seal. The sudden explosion of chakra stunned all of them. Kurenai quickly realized what Naruko was doing. She was trying to force the invading chakra out by overwhelming it with her own. Stop, Naruko. If you force that much chakra into your body, there's no telling what the damage could be. She shouted. I can handle it. Naruko gritted out. Anko charged at Naruko with her kunai drawn back for a stab. If you're gonna do something, do it now. The Tokuho yelled as she thrust the kunai at Naruko. Slice. Everyone held their breath. Naruko dodged the kunai narrowly and rolled away from Anko quickly. And released it, however it didn't stop their worry. Damn, that was way too close. Naruko panted as she stood. As one, her friends and teachers' bodies moved to attack her. Naruko dodged a couple of punches from Hinata, thankful that whoever was controlling Hinata couldn't make her use the Jukin, gentle fist, that the Hyuga clan were so feared for. Enough of this. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruko shouted as she formed the seal before her. Instantly, 30 Narukos swarmed over her unwilling attackers and bound their limbs with rope that Naruko unsealed from a scroll. Temporarily safe from attacks, Naruko scanned the field as she drew a kunai. The person who used that jutsu had to be somewhere nearby, and Naruko doubted that he'd give up as easily as that. Doden. Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu. Earth style. Headhunter jutsu. She heard before being dragged up to her neck in the earth. A black-clad body leapt up and stood in front of her. He was wearing Anbu-style armor and a red kitsune mask. Get him, she ordered her clones, who charged the masked man with a roar. Meanwhile, she fruitlessly tried to free herself from her tomb. She couldn't make any hand signs, and she only had one jutsu that could be used without hand signs. Her clones were being wiped out, so she had to try it before they were gone, and her friends and teachers were at the unknown attacker's mercy. She focused on her chakra and needed it before opening her mouth at the attacker. Sweden. Teppodama. Water-style liquid bullets. She mouthed before firing 3 fast-moving balls of water at the man, who had been taken off guard by the seal-less jutsu. He dodged one on pure reflex, but was struck on the mask and in the chest by the remaining two, sending him flying. "Get me outta here." Naruto ordered her two remaining clones and they hurriedly dug her out and pulled her up. Meanwhile the other members of Team 8, plus Anko, having regained control of their bodies were struggling to get out of the bonds that Naruto's clones had tied them with. The Nawanuke no Jutsu, rope escape jutsu, was only working slowly and they were helpless to aid their friend, subordinate as she once more faced off against the man who attacked her. The man had regained his footing and the kitsune mask, badly damaged by the teppodama, was cracking and crumbling away to reveal. "Cousin Haruo?" Ino yelped in shock. Haruo ignored Ino and glared at Naruto. "How did you escape my trap, demon bitch?" He hissed at the Jinchuriki. "How? You failed to graduate. Mizuki told me that himself." "Trap? Wait, my house. You did that?" Naruto shouted, glaring at the man angrily. "I was in a meeting with my Ji-chan, you bastard. And I graduated because Mizuki Teme went traitor and I kicked his ass. Just like I'm gonna kick yours for attacking my friends." Naruto made the familiar hand sign again, her anger getting so strong she instinctively added a word to her favorite jutsu. "Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Mass Shadow Clone Jutsu," she yelled. In a massive explosion of smoke, an entire army of Narutos surrounded the man. The original hand signaled some to free her speechless team. Haruo looked around in shock. There had to be at least 1,000 clones in the clearing. Forcing himself to calm down, Haruo smirked at Naruto. "These things may have beaten a weakling chunin like Mizuki, but I am a jonin, demon bitch. I won't fall as easily as all that." He sneered at the red-wearing kunoichi. "Then it's a good thing she has a team." Kurenai snarled as she stepped up next to Naruto, red eyes boring into the man who dared attack her student. Anko stood on the other side of Naruto, a sadistic smile on her face as she played with a kunai. Immediately behind Naruto, Ino and Hinata glared at Haruo. Haruo feigned shock. "Oh, why didn't I think of that?" A series of popping sounds signaled the arrival of outsiders to the battle. A spinning tornado cut through the clones and stopped at the side of Haruo, revealing a man also dressed in black Anbu-style armor and wearing a blue kitsune mask. A swirl of leaves revealed a man in white Anbu armor and a black kitsune mask, who promptly fell into the standard kata of the Jukin. "You know, now I come to think of it, I did." Haruo sneered at Team 8. Most of the group were on edge as they listened on about the group of Jonin that were attacking three of their own. Yuki downed a glass of water before he opened to the next chapter, Chapter 4, Clash. Team 8 vs Kitsune Killers. Kurenai frowned across the field at Yamanaka Haruo and his two accomplices. The tornado that one used to enter the field was definitely the Suga, tunneling fang, taijutsu move of the Inuzuka clan. Kiba frowned when he heard that. Whereas the other one was in the ready stance of the Jukin, gentle fist, taijutsu style of the Hyuga clan. Neji frowned at what he assumed was a main branch disgracing the clan in such a way, while Hinata was worried for her other as well as her crush's other self. A Yamanaka, a Hyuga and an Inuzuka. Anko noted. She was still playing with the kunai in her hands in an unconcerned fashion. Kurenai picked up the message Anko was sending her. Two clans who had suffered almost no casualties on the day of the Kyubi and one that had suffered moderate casualties. That sent a frown across the faces of those that didn't already have one. The Inuzuka is probably having his rage and grief at his pack mates being killed taken advantage of by the other two. Kurenai thought as she drew a kunai. But who is actually pulling the strings here? Haruo? The Hyuga? Or is it someone else? In any case, we have to take them prisoner to find out what they know and what they have done. Surrender, Haruo. The Hokage knew well in advance that you would attempt to attack us here today. Kurenai called over to the man who had dared attack her team. Haruo scoffed. If he had evidence I had done something, I would be in T&I right now. Just because he had no evidence does not mean he did nothing to stop you. Kurenai fired back. At that moment, Howl, my youth, bellowed a green blur as it crossed the field and dodged through Naruto's one-girl army, dynamic entry. Lee smiled. That's right, Guy-sensei. Show those unyouthful shinobi the errors of their ways with your youth. Neji and Tenten sighed at their teammate and sensei's youthfulness shudder. With a howl of pain, The presumptive Inuzuka was sent flying across the field by a mighty kick to the face that utterly shattered the mask he wore. The green blur responsible then moved on to the Hyuga. Konoha Daisenko, Great Leaf Flash. Everybody was expecting Lee to burst into another great monologue about his sensei. However, when they turned to look at him, he was currently writing down a list of taijutsu techniques and ideas to learn for later. Where the hell did he get a notebook and pencil? The blur roared and turned from a streak of green into a spinning top that sent the Hyuga flying as well, the mask hiding his identity smashed into pieces from a single, powerful kick. The blur then zoomed over and stopped next to Kurenai. Finally able to see the true form of the blur, the three Genin Kunoichi looked, and then wished they hadn't. Thankfully, Tenten had knocked Lee unconscious with a large mallet before he could go on another tirade about how they shouldn't disrespect Guy-sensei. Yuki just wondered where the mallet came from. He distinctly remembered removing all of the weapons the Genin were carrying before they arrived. Seriously, he may be the multiverse god of space, but not even he knows where women keep those things. The blur was a tall, muscular man in a green spandex leotard. He wore orange leg warmers and a red hite-8 around his waist acting as a belt for some reason. He also had on a flak jacket that showed he was at least Chunin rank. Yuki stopped and looked at the two conscious members of Team 9. How do they even put those spandex leotards on anyways? There doesn't appear to be any zippers or the like on it. Tenten and Neji both deadpanned and spoke at the same time. You don't want to know. The freakiest part about the man was his head. He had shiny black hair in a bowl cut and thick eyebrows that seemed to move with a life of their own. Tenten quickly covered her mouth to suppress the snort that came out at that observation. She was only semi-successful, however. Hinata blanched and was eternally grateful that she was a Hyuga, and not an Uchiha at that moment because the Byakugan didn't have any memorization capability like the Sharingan Kapiwili had. Sasuke was not that lucky. Ino's internal fashion disaster alarm was ringing at top volume and she immediately forgave Naruto for having worn the orange jumpsuit in the past, as it was nowhere near as horrifyingly awful as the outfit she saw before her right now. Ino was feeling the same way as her counterpart. Yuki brought up a strange pattern of shapes made up of thin rectangles of various shades of dark green and gray on the screen. Thinking on it, Guy and Lee's outfits might look a bit better if they used this pattern instead of the regular green. Folks back home refer to it as digital camouflage. It's used by some military to break up a person's shape and vary in colors depending on the terrain. That got Ino's fashionista side in overdrive, coming up with ideas for the pattern. Naruko's face was utterly blank, echoed by her shadow clone, Army of One. She had worn a Kill Me Now orange jumpsuit that made her look like a walking traffic cone, and she hadn't looked half as bad as this person did right now. A sentiment shared by the gathered genin. She immediately made a mental note to ask her Ji-chan to ban green spandex leotards from Konoha. Yuki muttered under his breath. I wouldn't be surprised if he had already tried. Yosh, a most youthful day to you all. The bushy-browed man greeted Team 8 in an obnoxiously loud and exuberant voice. I am glad to see that your youth has not been dampened by these most unyouthful of foes. Words of sympathy were given to Tenten and Neji for having to deal with that for a year. Kurenai-sensei. Who is this guy? Naruko asked, her eyebrow twitching slightly. My pardon. How unyouthful of me not to introduce myself. The green-clad man shouted before Kurenai could say anything. I am known as Konoha's sublime green beast of prey, Maida Guy. May you be ever youthful, young one. Others seemed to be catching Naruko's eyebrow twitch. Is he always like that? Naruto asked nervously as he looked at Tenten, his pity increasing when he got her nod in reply. Right. Anko said, her own eyebrow twitching slightly now. Listen Guy. Could you handle the Hyuga, while me and Nide-chan take care of the Inuzuka? Who will take care of Haruo? Asked Kurenai. Anko gestured to Naruko, Ino and Hinata. You can't be serious. He's an assassination specialist. Kurenai said, red eyes boring into her friend's honey brown eyes. He's also outnumbered. Kami knows how many to one, Nide-chan. Anko pointed out, gesturing to the horde of Narukos around them. And I think Naruko-chan here could keep popping him out all day long. Geez, make it sound like my other is a slut, why don't ya? Mumbled Naruto, getting everyone who was standing to stumble, despite the fact they weren't moving. Odd. Shifting her stance slightly, she put her game face, red, sadistic, on and looked at the genin. Alright Gakis, here is your first A-ranked mission as a team. Capture Yamanaka Haruo alive. Break his arms and legs if you have to, but he has to be alive, got it? Hell yeah, I owe this guy some payback for destroying my old home and making Ino-chan and Hinata-chan hurt each other. Naruto growled as she drew a kunai. Break his legs. Naruto growled out. Meanwhile in another universe, an orange-haired grenade launcher, hammer-wielding girl sneezed into her pancakes. Ino nodded. No one blows up my friend's house and gets away with it. Besides, my cheek is still sore from Hinata-chan's backhand. Ji gomenasai, Ino-chan. Hinata said as she shifted to an aggressive Jukin stance. But my stomach is also still sore F from your kick. You owe me some red bean soup and I'll stand you a few at the bakery that makes your favorite cinnamon buns, okay? Ino said as she drew a kunai as well. Yuki smirked. Thank the gods that you stated a few there, Ino. Hinata can put away cinnamon buns like Naruto does ramen. Ino gulped while some of the genin looked at the indigo-haired girl incredulously, all the while said girl was inventing a new shade of red. Yosh, Kurenai-san, your genin are most youthful. Guy said exuberantly, I shall burn my youthful flames to equal theirs or I shall run 100 laps around Konoha on one hand. Everyone's sweat dropped upon hearing that, which grew upon seeing Tenten and Neji's reactions. Right, let's just kick their asses already. Anko said as she ran to where the Inuzuka was getting up, swearing like a sailor. Indeed, let us display our flames of youth for all to see, shouted Guy as he ran to intercept the Hyuga before he could rejoin Haruo. Kurenai sighed. Oh hell. Looking at her so new they still squeak team, she read the determination in their faces. Be careful, was all she said before rushing to join Anko. With Guy, stand aside, the demon vessel must be slain, the Hyuga said in a monotone. He was of the main family, Guy could see from his unmarked forehead. He was probably in his mid-20s. Kiba and Akamaru weren't the only ones that were growling at this point. Guy frowned. This is most unyouthful of you. Young Naruko is not the fox, she is the container of it. Indeed, agreed the Hyuga, surprising Guy slightly. I have observed the seal with my Byakugan. It is utterly impossible for the Kyuubi to break out. Then why do you do this? Asked Guy as he slid smoothly into his Goken stance. Her very presence corrupts and taints the sanctity of Hinata-sama. The Hyuga replied, a hint of disgust in his voice. He also slid into his ready stance, that of the Jukin. Neji scoffed and muttered several unflattering things about the main branch. Yuki heard all of them of course and spoke up, despite what you think Neji, Hinata's probably the only one that isn't like that. In fact, I find it highly moronic of you for blaming Hinata for the death of your father. How you expect a 3-year-old to defend herself against a Jonin when she was asleep and in her own bed is beyond me. He ignored the sputtering Neji and went back to the story. Nonsense. Guy said dismissively, if anything Naruko's presence causes Hinata-sama's youthful flames to reach new heights. It would seem we are at an impasse. Observed the Hyuga as he tensed his body for combat. So it would seem, agreed Guy. The air around the two of them was thick and dense, with both chakra and tension. A solitary leaf fluttered between the two and slowly drifted down to the ground between the two ninja. As it touched the ground, it was ripped into shreds by the clash between the two opposing taijutsu styles. With Kurenai and Anko out of the way, the Inuzuka growled, I'm gonna rip the fox into pieces and feed them to it, which she's still breathing. Not imaginative enough. Anko said critically, it's been done before. Everyone's sweat dropped at Anko's blasé attitude. Anko, Kurenai said with a sweat drop, I don't think you should be critiquing him on his torture methods. Why think? Anko asked with a pout, but Nai-chan, everything he suggests is so boring. No imagination at all. Oi, yelled the Inuzuka, looking offended. Anko ignored him. Kurenai sighed and looked at the Inuzuka. Naruko isn't the fox. She is the fox's jailer. I don't give a crap. The Inuzuka snarled back, if she dies, the fox dies. It's as simple as that. Then why isn't your ninkin here with you? Anko asked pointedly, making the brash man flinch. He refused to come because he knew you were wrong, jackass. Kiba just shook his head in disappointment, not even he was that stupid. Suga. The Inuzuka yelled as he attacked. Idiot. Anko said as she dodged to the side. Back with the genin and the Naruto army. One chance, Yamanaka Haruo. Surrender. Naruto said flatly. Or what? Your little army will prank me to death? Haruo scoffed dismissively. You are no kunoichi, demon bitch. You have a couple of tricks, but that doesn't make you a shinobi. She's no traitor like you, or at least. Ino shouted at her distant cousin. She's never attacked fellow Konoha ninja like you did with the Shinrenshin no Jutsu, mind destruction jutsu. You don't know what you're talking about, brat. Haruo growled. Illuminate me. Ino challenged him. Haruo chuckled darkly. No can do. It is an S-rank secret, punishable by an extremely painful death if revealed. Besides, I'm a loyal ninja of Konoha. Yuki was heard muttering again. Just goes to show you how stupid people become when they succumb to their own hatred and bigoted beliefs. TCH. Yeah right, muttered Ino as her mind raced. S-rank? Naruto had done something that deserved that high a secrecy classification? Ino-chan, ignore him. Naruto said firmly. He's spewing poison because he knows that he's finished, loyal ninja of Konoha, or not. Naruto-chan's right. Hinata said, we should capture him before he tries any more Yamanaka clan jutsu. Right, Ino said, shaking her head to clear it. What was she thinking, listening to the taunts of the enemy? She gripped the kunai she held in her hand tighter. She was about to charge the traitor to her clan when a Naruto clone leaned in to whisper into her ear. We clones will be the cannon fodder. We are far more easily replaced than you or Hinata-chan. The clone whispered. A shiver went down her spine as the clone's whispered words tickled her ear. What the heck? She thought with a small blush. Everyone was looking at Ino, their expressions making her blush and shrink a little. She liked being the center of attention, but this was something new that she wasn't ready for. Alright, first wave. Attack. Naruto commanded. 100 clones charged forward at the Yamanaka Jonin with a roar. Haruo beat off clone after clone with punches and kicks. When only a small group remained, he flipped through some hand signs. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. Fire Style. Grand Fireball Jutsu. Yuki stopped Sasuke as the boy was about to open his mouth and complain, it's not an Uchiha clan jutsu Sasuke. It's actually a rather common fire element jutsu. It's just that the Uchiha taught it as a young age as a coming-of-age practice. Others don't normally use it until they hit Chunin and start elemental training. He said as he raised his hand to his mouth and shot a fairly large ball of fire at the clones, destroying them. Naruto stood with her arms crossed and her head cocked to one side, watching the Jonin. Finally, she said, you know, for a Jonin, you aren't as fast as I would have thought. With Guy, the two combatants separated from their clash, the Hyuga being thrown back by a snap kick to the jaw, while Guy leapt back gracefully to land in his original pose again. Spitting out some blood, the Hyuga got to his feet, his eyes narrowed. Who are you? The Jukin is the supreme taijutsu style in all of Konoha, if not the world, yet you dodge my blows as if they were nothing. He said angrily. Yuki deadpanned at Neji, and to think Neji that you are guilty of the same arrogance as most of the main branch you so vehemently despise. You'd think he got some form of amusement seeing the Hyuga boy sputter like that. I am Maeda Guy, the acknowledged taijutsu master of Konoha. Guy said seriously, I am also Jonin sensei to the Hyuga prodigy, Hyuga Neji. Thus my knowledge of the Jukin surpasses that of any other non-Hyuga. The branch house whelp. The Hyuga sneered, well, we shall see how you fare when I am using this. Byakugan. Settling into a more aggressive stance, the Hyuga said, I am Hyuga Arashi of the main family. Prepare to die. Shaking his head sorrowfully, Guy said, you are most unyouthful. It seems I must beat some youth into you. Both Tenten and Neji seemed to be torn between wanting to pray for this Hyuga Arashi's soul or not. Try if you can, the Hyuga said scornfully before the two blurred into motion once again. With Anko and Kurenai, when the Inuzuka stopped spinning and landed after his Suga, Anko was ready with a favorite technique of hers. Seneashu, striking shadow snakes. Anko hissed, thrusting her arm out. 4 snakes emerged from her sleeve, wrapped around the Inuzuka and sank their fangs into him. Aarrrggghh. Snake whore. The Inuzuka snarled, Suga. The desperation move worked, shredding the snakes into pieces, but ripped the wounds from the snake fangs open in the process. That's it, keep moving, Anko crooned at the panting man. The more you move, the faster the venom in your blood will spread. You did remember to use non-lethal venom, didn't you? Kurenai asked suspiciously. Of course I did, Nai-chan. Anko retorted indignantly, and then paused. At least, I think I did, meh. As long as we get him the anti-venom, he'll be fine. Yuki snorted quietly to himself. He always found it a wandering mind's curiosity that it was referred to as anti-venom instead of anti-venom. Damn you. The Inuzuka roared. How dare you treat Inuzuka Shippo like this? Tenga. Rotating fang. He spun vertically this time rather than on his horizontal axis, becoming a giant buzzsaw aimed at Anko. Kiba began to sweat heavily. He had heard of Inuzuka Shippo and may have idolized the man at one point when he was little, but that had been swiftly crushed when he found out that his views on women got a client killed and the man was subsequently neutered by Kiba's mother as punishment. She quickly kawaramied, substituted, with a nearby branch and was interested to see the branch reduced to so much sawdust. Turning to Kurenai with a forced smile on her face, Anko said, Nai-chan, a bit of help here? The things I do for you, Anko? Kurenai sighed as she weaved hand signs. Everyone looked around curiously when a voice sounded from everywhere and nowhere around them. The things I do for love. Only Yuki recognized the voice as an off-colored scaredy dog. Back with Naruto, Haruo raised an eyebrow. Say what? Either you're holding back or you plain suck as a jonin. Naruto said insultingly. You were barely moving faster than my clones, and while that fireball was way bigger than anything Sasuke Teme ever did, it was still far from the biggest I've ever seen. Everyone looked at Naruto. What? Mid-fight banter is important. Who made a bigger Gokakyu than mine? Haruo asked, insulted. Sandane Ji-chan, Naruto said. He took me to his personal training field once as a birthday treat and showed me some of his favorite jutsu. The Gokakyu was one of them and his was twice the size of yours, at least. Ino and Hinata looked odd. The third Hokage was reputed to know every non-Kekkei Genkai jutsu in Konoha. It was one reason why he was nicknamed Hakase, Professor. To be shown some of his best jutsu was a tremendous honor, and he had done it as a treat for a little girl's birthday? When the others saw Naruto nod to the unanswered question, they were equally odd. Damn brat. Haruo growled and started to run at the red-clad kunoichi. Second wave, now, Naruto commanded. 100 shadow clones formed up in front of their original and her team and each threw either kunai or shuriken at Haruo, and then clapped their hands. Futon. Repusho no Jutsu. Wind style. Gale palm jutsu. The 100 shadow clones chanted, causing a massive blast of wind to erupt from their hands. It swept towards Haruo and impacted on the weapons, speeding them up considerably. Shit. Doden. Doryuheki no Jutsu. Earth style. Mud wall jutsu. Haruo yelped in surprise as he slammed his hands on the ground, causing a section of the ground to erupt upwards in front of him just in time to block the incoming rain of metallic death. Haruo gulped when he heard the shuriken and kunai thud into the wall, as well as the fierce wind blowing over the wall. That makes 2 elemental jutsu she's used now, and she used the first one without any hand signs. Where the hell did she learn them? The Jonin thought frantically. Naruto's team were asking their teammate the same thing. Oh, those? Part of my inheritance was a jutsu library. Last night, I was up late practicing those 2 jutsu with a couple of 100 bunshin, which lets me learn things faster, sorta. Anyway, I only have those 2 down, so we'll have to get serious now. Naruto said with a slight frown. That seemed plenty serious to me. Ino said looking at the earth wall studded with weaponry. With Guy, the 2 battling ninja moved so gracefully that, were it not for the fact that they were trying to do serious harm to one another, it might even be called a work of art. Yuki was kinda thankful that this was a pocket dimension. One does not mention art without a chance of invoking Deidara to appear and blow shit up. Kicks were lashed out, only to be dodged or blocked. Punches were countered, jabs were exchanged, all taking place at a speed that most shinobi would find hard to match for any length of time. The 2 combatants separated once again, with the Hyuga looking frustrated. How can this be? I cannot close even one of his tenketsu. It's almost like fighting Hiyashi-sama. He knows precisely how I'm going to move even as I decide to do it. Hyuga Arashi thought angrily, fine. He leaves me no choice. Naruto scoffed quietly to himself, arrogant much. Guy, on the other hand, was enjoying himself immensely. Ah, now this is most youthful. A clash of warriors fighting for dominance over the other. I should really challenge my eternal rival to another match soon. You could almost hear the calls of youth through the dimensional walls. Elsewhere, Hitaki Kakashi shivered as he had a bad feeling Guy was thinking about challenging him to another, youthful contest. That got chuckles from Naruto and Sakura. Sasuke just has a smirk play across his lips. Stubborn, aren't you? Arashi said as he glared at the spandex-clad ninja. I have been called such before, by unyouthful people such as you. Guy conceded. Humph, you would do well to stand aside now, else you shall not live to regret your defiance. Arashi said pointedly. That I doubt. Guy chuckled humorlessly, such words have been spoken to me by far more fearsome foes than you, and yet here I stand. They were not of the Hyuga clan. Arashi said arrogantly. Now, you are within range of my divination. The Hyuga adopted a low stance with a hand extended before him and the other arched behind him. Jukano. Hake Rokuhuion Sho. Gentle fist art. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Arashi said coldly as he began the signature attack of the Hyuga main branch. Only for his foe to vanish from his sight. Where did he go? Safe to say, Kiba was really getting into this. Arashi could not believe it. The man he had been about to trounce with his best technique had simply vanished without a trace. Arashi pushed his Byakugan to the very limit of its range, but found no sign of his opponent anywhere within 10 kilometers in any direction, which should be impossible. Only the Yondaime Hokage had ever moved such a distance in less time than it took to blink. Youth! Guy roared as he erupted from the ground beneath Arashi and grabbed him around his waist. What the? Arashi got out before he was thrown to the ground and pinned there. Jabun Ruru. One's own rule. Guy roared as he head-butted the Hyuga in the stomach. If I can't do 100 push-ups in 5 seconds, Cossack dance time. The spandex-clad ninja declared. Yuki made a screen appear as he played the video game clip of the same attack. Moving so fast he blurred, pushing up and down with incredible speed, head-butting the Hyuga in the stomach every time he lowered himself. Victory! Guy celebrated. He had succeeded in his self-appointed challenge. Then he noticed his training partner staggering to his feet, clutching his stomach. Grinning with those shiny teeth of his, he spun in a miniature twister. Konoha Seishin Ekusasezu. Leaf Youth Exercise. Guy yelled enthusiastically as he kicked the still-recovering Hyuga with the full force of his muscles and the centrifugal force of the spin, sending him crashing into a tree, blissfully unconscious. Once again, Lee was busy writing all of the youthful, new taijutsu moves down. The spandex-clad ninja wiped off the remains of dirt from his jumpsuit. It had been a while since he had used ninjutsu. His Doden Mogaragakure no Jutsu, Earth Style, Hidden Mold Jutsu, was the perfect way to sneak up on a Hyuga. Everyone perked up upon hearing that, while Neji and Hinata started to sweat a little. Rather than a perfect sphere as most would believe, the Byakugan only gave them a large dome of sight, most of that directed to the sky and 360 degrees around them, leaving only a small amount of sight beneath the earth, reaching perhaps 3 feet down at most. A glaring weakness and one that the branch family was well aware of. Evidently, the main family was unaware of this weakness. Neji glared at everyone in the room, lacing his next words with killing intent. And that information better not spread from this room. The following, or else, was left unspoken. Guy regarded the defeated form of his opponent with a slight frown. I may have overdone it just a touch. Wow, even the emotionally stunted individuals deadpanned at that one. With Enko and Kurenai, Megan. Narukumi no Jutsu. Demonic Illusion. Death Mirage Jutsu. Kurenai whispered as she completed her hand signs. To Shippo, she vanished in a swirl of leaves. He looked around groggily as he felt himself getting weaker. The venom in his body was beginning to affect his body more and more, making his head spin. He had to wrap this up quickly. Suddenly the world turned red. Blood appeared on the ground, next to dead bodies, ones he recognized easily as they bore the fang tattoo marks of the Inuzuka on their faces. Shippo looked around in horror, seeing the entire Inuzuka clan, Ninkin and all, lying dead around him, cut to pieces. The shock of his worst fear, the one thing he fervently wished to never see, combined with the venom Anko's snakes had injected into him, was too much for him. Shippo's last thought before he fell into unconsciousness was, "I really hate genjutsu, damn it." The only thing Naruto agreed with Shippo over, to be sure. As Inuzuka Shippo collapsed, Kurenai was grateful for the fact. The look of sheer broken despair on his face at whatever it was he saw under the genjutsu's effect had been startlingly bleak. Ino interrupted, "Wait, I thought that genjutsu involved making the person see what you want them to see." That may be the case, however quite a few genjutsu leave the images up to the victim's imaginations against them. It's why genjutsu is such a dangerous art to go up against. The only art to my knowledge that has more versatility with each technique than genjutsu is fuinjutsu. Something that made the Uzumaki clan one of the most feared clans, period. That information caught Naruto's attention and the boy made a mental note to check up on that. Then again, she had never used this particular genjutsu on an Inuzuka before, so Kurenai supposed that this was useful information. Anko tied the comatose Inuzuka up with some escape-proof rope she carried around with her on the off chance of something like this happening. The T and I Kunoichi grinned at her friend. "Boy, am I glad that you asked me to help with your Genin Nai-chan. I haven't had this much fun in a long time," Anko said with relish. Sakura screeched out incredulously, "That was fun?" Kurenai rolled her eyes. "Only you would find being attacked by 2 Jonin and a Chunin with the intent of killing one of your students fun." Sakura blushed at having her rhetorical question answered by the story like that. Anko looked serious for a moment. "I think they were going to try and kill all of us, Nai-chan. There's no way that the other 2 Gakis would stand by and let their friend's death go unavenged, and you and me would be right there next to him, you know that." Kurenai frowned and conceded the point to her friend. "I suppose." She was interrupted by the incoming green blur that was Maeda Guy. He appeared with his usual shiny grin and had a beaten and battered Hyuga in one hand. "Kami, Guy, don't you think you went just a little overboard on him?" Kurenai said as she massaged her temples to try to stave off the incipient headache she had. Guy smiled somewhat sheepishly and opened his mouth to say something, when a howling gale of wind blew past the 3 Jonin, staggering them. "What the hell was that?" asked Anko as she smoothed her ruffled trench coat back into its usual appearance. "It came from where the children are fighting Haruo," Kurenai said, worry in her voice. That got everyone's attention and they became even more focused on the events of the story. "I am sure they are doing most youthfully well, Kurenai-san." Guy boomed in his nice guy pose. "Let us go and observe their youthful flames explode." Yeah, whatever," Anko said absently as she tied up the Hyuga. Not that the guy was going anywhere, as badly beaten as he was. He would need a quick trip to the hospital before he could be interrogated. With Naruto and friends, Haruo decided that enough was enough. The damn demon bitch had made him look stupid in the last 2 minutes and he was getting worried about his compatriots. He was neither as insular and arrogant as Arashi, nor as stupid and brash as Shippo. He knew who and what Maeda Guy was. While he was confident in his own skill enough to face a freshly promoted Jonin and the snake whore at once, he was not stupid enough to face an elite Jonin on top of that. He just hoped Arashi could hold out until he did what needed to be done. Haruo formed the tiger hand sign and began gathering and compressing chakra for the jutsu that he hoped would slay the demon bitch for once and for all. Naruto could feel the chakra being built up by Haruo. There was so much of it that the hairs on the back of her neck were standing up. It wasn't anywhere near cage level, but it was becoming dense enough that it made up for its lack of quantity with its quality. "Take Hinata-chan and Ino-chan a safe distance away from here." Naruto ordered some of her clones, voice sharp with tension. "No way," Ino protested, "we're a team. We'll fight this guy together, Naruto." Ino was just as Protestant as her other, that's right. Ignoring Ino, Naruto looked at Hinata. "Hinata-chan, what's that guy doing with his chakra?" Hinata paused then said, "Byakugan," and looked in the direction Haruo's Doryuheki was and gasped. "He's concentrating his chakra in his lungs. I think it's fire-natured. That's why you need to get out of here," Naruto said to Ino urgently, but she could tell from the set of her jaw that the stubborn Yamanaka wouldn't budge willingly. Sakura turned to her rival, "And that's a good way to get cooked, Ino. If you wanted to get your team roast pig, that's not the way to do it." Ino turned red with anger, and was about to argue with Sakura but was interrupted as Yuki continued. Nodding to her shadow clones, Naruko turned away as Ino and Hinata were bodily picked up and carried away, despite their protests, by several of them. Just as the group of shadow clones reached the edge of the field, Haruo roared the name of his best jutsu as he used it. Kaden. Goryuka no Jutsu. Fire Style. Great Dragon Fire Jutsu. Came from behind the earth wall before it was blown apart by an enormous ball of flames shaped like a snarling dragon. For some strange reason, Sasuke had his own notebook and wrote down the jutsu to check out for later. It sped at Naruko's location with impressive speed, burning the grass up to 3 meters away as it passed. The dragon burned through shadow clones as they attempted to block it until it finally reached where Naruko stood impassively, whereupon it exploded on contact with the earth, creating a huge blast that sent heat across the entire field. Most gasped, and the girls had tears in their eyes, thinking they had just seen the end of Naruko. Naruko. Hinata and Ino screamed in horror at having witnessed their teammates burned to a crisp before them. Around them, the mass of Naruko clones dispersed in puffs of chakra smoke. The 3 Jonin watching were horrified at the sight of the pyre that was where Naruko once stood. The boys had their heads dipped in solemn silence. Naruto had his eyes glued to Yuki, waiting for him to continue. Haruo, on the other hand, stood up shakily. He had used up far too much chakra using that Kaden jutsu and knew he would not get away. Nevertheless, it would be worth it. He had finally done it. Aha! Ahahahahahahaha. Haruo laughed hysterically. I did it. The demon bitch is dead. Not even her bones remain. Ahahahahaha. Ino and Hinata charged at the man who so ruthlessly slain their teammate and even dared to insult her even in death. Ino tried to kick him, but Haruo caught her leg and threw her away dismissively. Hinata, who had instinctively activated her Byakugan in her rage, snarled out the traditional start of the Hyuga final move declaration that Arashi had used not 5 minutes ago, even as she assumed the same stance he had. You are within range of my divination. Jukano. Hake Sanjuni Sho. Gentle Fist Art. 8 trigrams, 32 palms. Hinata growled out, making Haruo's eyes widen in surprise. According to the scuttlebutt around town, as well as Arashi, the Hyuga heiress was unskilled in the family art and had not been taught anything more than the basic kata as a result. Way to prove the asshats wrong, Hinata. Yuki stated with a smile, attempting to break the tense sadness. It didn't work. Nisho. 2 palms. Yelled Hinata, striking at Haruo's forearms, sealing the tenketsu. Yansho. 4 palms. 2 more consecutive strikes across the chest. Hachisho. 8 palms. 4 strikes to the abdomen. Jirokusho. 16 palms. 8 strikes to the upper legs and arms. Hake, Sanjuni Sho. 8 trigrams, 32 palms. Hinata screamed as she dealt the last 16 blows all across the man's body, the sheer force of the chakra blasting him back slightly. Damn, I can barely feel my arms and legs. I can't channel chakra at all. Haruo thought angrily as he fell to his knees. Hinata, panting at the effort, glared at Haruo. Why did you kill her? She demanded harshly, tears flowing freely. Ino walked up beside her, her own eyes damp with tears, and put a comforting hand on her shoulder. She deserved to die. Haruo spat back, she killed my mother 12 years ago. She was just a baby then, you fool. Hinata screeched back, incensed by the man's seeming stupidity. She raised her hand to deliver the final blow, when a loud screaming sound reached her ears. It sounded strangely familiar. Quadruple ag, I'm gonna could be heard across the entire field, but Hinata couldn't see anyone. She jumped when Ino's hand suddenly tightened painfully on her shoulder. Everyone turned to look at Yuki so quickly he thought they'd get whiplash. Look, the Yamanaka shouted as she pointed at the sky. Hinata whirled around and used the telescopic vision of her Byakugan to zoom in on a rapidly falling dot in the sky. Naruko? Hinata breathed hopefully. Hinata looked just as hopeful. Most were holding their breath in worry and anticipation. With Naruko, Uzumaki Naruko, albeit somewhat burnt and sooty, was perfectly fine. If you could call plummeting to her death from Kami knows how high in the sky, fine. Yuki noticed the looks he was getting, it's what it says. Yeah, really got to work on my chakra control, and on my impulsiveness, before it kills me, if I survive this. Naruko thought in a surprisingly calm way, even as she screamed her plentiful lungs out, as she thought back to a couple of minutes ago. Flashback. Naruko had her arms crossed as she watched the incoming fireball that Yamanaka Haruo had fired at her approach. She noted, almost distantly, that such was the heat of the Goryuka that her clones were being destroyed even as it touched them. Well, this is a pickle. Naruko thought clinically, none of my jutsu will work on this thing. Heck, the Repusho will just make it worse. It's way too fast and big to dodge either. What should I do here? The genin scooted to the edge of their seats. Naruko frowned slightly before she had an idea. Wait, Ji-chan told me once that channeling chakra to your limbs makes them much stronger, but you need to have good chakra control or you can rip your muscles and tendons apart. Weighing her choices for a split second, get burned to ash or possibly not be able to move for a while until the damn fox heals her up. Naruko chose the obvious one. Here goes nothing, she thought as the burning hot aura of the powerful jutsu washed over her. Waiting until the last possible second, Naruko squatted, channeled as much chakra to her legs as she could, and then jumped up with all her strength. She moved in a red blur that none of the others on the field saw as they had been focusing on the Goryuka before it impacted on where she had been standing. Her chakra was so disturbed by sudden shift that her clones were dispelled. She flew high up into the sky, out of the sensor bubble that detected all things coming into Konoha and up further into the sky. Her legs burned with pain beyond anything that Naruko had felt during her training, so she guessed that she had indeed damaged her muscles somewhat. That could wait until later. The more important thing right now was to stop going higher, or she might die once she came back to Earth. She discarded several possible ideas involving Cage Bunshin before hitting on an idea that might work. Futon. Repusho. Naruko said, deliberately using more chakra than she needed to use in the jutsu. The result sent her falling back to Earth like a cannon shot. Quadruple A-ag, I'm gonna, she screamed as the training field came into sight once again. And despite that they heard it before, the group faceplanted at the situation. Flashback end, maybe I should have tried just the regular amount of chakra. Naruko thought as she fell further towards the field. Definitely something to think about if this happens again. Naruko peered at the field intently. Naruko's eyes, while not telescopic like the Byakugan, were still very sharp so she could see the field fairly well by this point. Those that had looked at Naruto were surprised when he nodded in agreement, he had that too. Huh. The blonde boy though to himself, and here I thought that everyone had that. Including the people in it. She focused on the amazing sight of kind. Gentle Hinata beat Haruo up with the taijutsu move she had been struggling to learn in secret, so she could impress her father. Hinata blushed at the praise and buried her face in Naruto's sleeve, getting a couple of chuckles from the group. She screamed again and saw her teammates turn to look at her. She thought that they had been crying, which was sad. She was certain that Ino was going to kick her ass when she got down, maybe Hinata and Kurenai-sensei as well. Naruko's eyes widened as she saw Haruo attempt to stand up. He was shaking off the effects of Hinata's Hake Sanjuni show already? That shouldn't be possible. It might not be as strong as the Rokuhuyan show, but the lesser version was still debilitating enough to disable a Jonin-level ninja for at least half an hour, or so Hinata said she had read in the scroll. Deciding that the how of the matter was unimportant for now, Naruko decided to take the bastard out before he tried to hurt her friends again. Making a pair of shadow clones, she had them throw her feet first at Haruo, followed by a futon. Repusho to speed her up a bit. Ino, Hinata, move. Now, she roared as she started spinning like an Inuzuka. Kiba paled a little, is she? With Hinata and Ino. When Hinata heard Naruko talk to her, she was giddy that she was still alive. When Naruko addressed her without honorifics, she almost fainted. But when Naruko ordered her to move in that tone of voice, she moved without even thinking about it, grabbing Ino and jumping to the side. She saw Naruko start to spin in a similar fashion to the Inuzuka clan technique Suga and wondered why. Then Naruko's voice resonated over the field. Uzumaki Taijutsu Ogi, Rasentenkyaku. Uzumaki Taijutsu secret technique, spiral heaven kick. Off somewhere in Fire Country. Tsunade looked up off in the distance suddenly, prompting Shizune to ask, "What's wrong, Lady Tsunade?" Tsunade stared for a bit more before turning her attention back to her apprentice. "I don't know. It just feels like someone ripped off one of my moves." Back with the group. Yuki paused for a second, as if seeing something that wasn't there before going back to the book. Was heard by everyone just before the spinning form of Naruto slammed into its target Yamanaka Haruo, who had just made it to his feet and drawn a kunai. Totally unprepared for the sudden impact, Haruo was caught in the chest by the kick, which had had its power increased by the throw of the clones, the repusho and the spin, so it was not surprising that the man was sent flying back across the field to slam into a tree, which cracked under the impact. Naruto, on the other hand, had kicked off of Haruo just before he slammed into the tree and had landed somewhat awkwardly on the ground. Panting with the exertion, she looked up as her other team members ran over, along with her two sensei and the weird man in spandex. Lee was crying at the youthfulness of the move Naruto used, and with slight jealousy that he would not be able to use it. He was a firm believer in not stealing the youthfulness of others' moves unless you get permission first. Hey, Naruto said with a pained smile. Her legs were really sore right now. What the hell did you think you were doing? Ino shouted at her angrily, fresh tears falling from her eyes as relief made itself known. You damn well almost died. What were you thinking? That you should have run when I had told you. Ino squirmed under the told you so glare both Naruto and Sakura were giving her. Naruto said bluntly, a grimace crossing her face as she tried and failed to stand up. If you'd moved as soon as I told you to, I would have been able to do something other than almost die there. Brat's got a point. Anko said offhandedly, in a battle, you should obey the leader without question. There was no leader. Ino protested shrilly. We're all genin. Naruto was the one to do almost all of the fighting and all of the strategy. Anko replied looking at Naruto, who was visibly trembling now, right, Gaki? I guess so. Naruto grunted as she gave up trying to stand and instead flopped on her behind. Her red trench coat was singed at the edge of the bottom, but not much further than that. I didn't really have an overall strategy other than beat him all to hell, though. Sakura broke the glare and gave a sound that was half scoff and half giggle. That does sound like something you do, Naruto. Naruto turned away in a vain attempt to hide his blush. Doesn't matter, you were the leader. Anko said decisively as she turned to regard Ino with hard eyes. She told you to do something because she sensed the chakra buildup for the Goryuga. She even had your teammate tell you that a dangerous jutsu was about to be launched at her and you still refused to obey her, meaning she had to waste precious seconds to get you both to safety. Ino's face paled. But, no buts. Yes, the brat did something reckless and stupid, but you did something moronic. You let your pride rule in the middle of a battle. Anko said mercilessly. Ino looked down sadly, don't need to rub it in. I feel guilty enough as it is. Kurenai walked over from where she had been securing Haruo. Alright, that's enough, all of you. We can continue this at a later time. For now, we need to get these 3 traitors to holding cells and these 3 genin to hospital. Naruto paled more than Ino. Ah no, not hospital. She whined, I hate it there. Then you can consider it punishment for doing whatever it is you did that damaged your legs to the point you can barely move. Kurenai told her bluntly. Naruto winced at the tone his other was given. I shall take our most unyouthful prisoners to the Anbu. Guy said, doing his nice guy pose yet again, and Naruto, I shall come to talk to you about that most youthful attack you just performed. You truly are full of the flames of youth. Naruto paled. With those words, he vanished in a shunshin, taking with him the 3 trussed-up ninja, and leaving behind one horrified Uzumaki Naruto. AAARRGGHH. She yelled, hospital and Mr. Super Bushy Brows? Someone kill me now. That last line got chuckles from everyone except for Lee, who was chastising Naruto for disrespecting his sensei, and Naruto, who had passed out. Yuki also chuckled a little and flipped to the next page. Okay, onto the next chapter. Eno Kago Te, Secrets Revealed.
That's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, then please like, share and do comments.